Okay. You are live.
Thank you. All right, let me copy and paste this. And there we are.
Just want to go right from the
Yeah, no shout out this week.
Okay.
I am gonna play the Ragnar Rosencrantz one later
Sure.
in the show, but
Okay.
so yeah, just the usual content warning, and then
All right. Hmm, 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 hmm.
okay, that has been posted. How about that?
You're posting the YouTube, I'm hoping.
No, just the Facebook. You
Mm.
gonna get us on the YouTube, on the Dear
Uh,
Me podcast YouTube?
yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's all I do is repost it on the Glenn Victor Facebook from the Dare
Yeah.
Me Facebook. And then, of course, I always see you have it on your Dean
9
Baker
o'clock.
Facebook, your Post Effects Facebook. And you know what my goal is, now that I got that YouTube channel caught up, Dean, this week is I'm gonna, Anchor is now part of SoundCloud. Did you know that?
Oh, well,
Yeah,
they're owned by Spotify.
I read a whole shit or Spotify, beg your
Yeah.
pardon, not
Yeah.
SoundCloud, Spotify. Read a whole shitload about it this week, but we'll
Yeah.
talk about it.
That's
All
that's
right, here we
been
go.
that's
Have
been a
fun.
year or
Have a
two.
good show.
Yeah.
5,
Uh,
4, 3, 2, 1. On average, just in the United States, about 220 people die every single day from an opiate overdose. By the time we finish this show, 8 to 10 people are going to die from an opiate overdose. If we get even one person, one viewer with this program that we might be able to help with some of the information that's shared on here, then it's all worth it. Hey everyone, it's your old pal Glenn Victor. Please welcome to the Dare Me podcast. We are coming to you live right now from Sacramento, California, and we're coming to you live from Orlando, Florida on the East Coast, where our partner in crime, Dean Baker, is standing by at the Post Effects Digital Studios. And Dean's going to join us here in just a moment as we begin episode 29 of the Dare Me podcast here on Sunday, October 1st, 2023. And we're so glad to have you with us. I see we've already got some live viewers that have joined in the program. We're going to flash that telephone number up on the screen throughout the show today. So if you might like to join us and call in live, you're welcome to do that. We also have a chat room that you can post comments and chime in on the show there if you like. We can also post a link in the chat room and bring you live on camera. So today's going to be a good show. We're going to be talking about things to help people get through opiate withdrawals. We're going to talk about Suboxone. We're going to talk about Methadone. We're going to talk about Kratom. We're going to talk about using marijuana to get through opiate withdrawals or to help people get through opiate withdrawals. All the things that we just mentioned are going to be part of the show today. And I know that boy Dean Baker has been busy, busy, busy getting all the news stories and slides posted in the StreamYard platform that we use for this podcast so that we can show them to you today. Don't have a whole lot of video. We got a couple videos coming up a little later in the show that we're going to have some fun with. So, again, we will touch on the opioid crisis in the news today. We've got some cool music news we're going to talk about, some fun memes. That's all coming up a little bit later in the show as well. And again, just want to give people a little bit of time to jump on board here. I see we're getting a few more viewers as we go because we are live on Facebook. We're live on about four different Facebook channels. We're live on four different YouTube channels. We're live on LinkedIn. We're live on X, which of course used to be Twitter. We're live on Threads. You get the idea, all the things. And I was just talking with Dean, who we're going to bring on in a second here. I know he's just getting all the links posted live and everything. That our goal with this podcast, now that we're up to episode 29, which still just blows my mind, is to begin posting now on SoundCloud and Spotify and the different podcast platforms. Beg your pardon. Oh, I'm looking at my phone. I'm just getting messages here. So, yeah, there's a platform out there that was called Anchor that would distribute various podcasts on a variety of different platforms. And now they're part of Spotify. That's what it is, Spotify. And so the podcast will soon be distributed on those platforms as well. So we're growing, we're expanding. In fact, our YouTube channel has really grown quite a bit with subscribers and all. So lots going on with the Dare Me podcast show. So, Dean, are you there with us today? Keep waiting for you to pop up. There he is. Dean Baker is live with us from Orlando. How's things back on the East Coast there, Dean?
Glenn, everything's going great. It's been
Okay,
a
well,
kind of a
good,
quiet
good.
weekend, and
Yeah.
after about the third time, I figured I'd jump on. After the third time, you called me out, so I figured
Yeah,
I'd
well,
jump
I
on.
was
And
wanting to bring you into the conversation right away. It is October 1st. Can you believe
yeah,
it? We are into the fall season and definitely transitioned from summer to fall here in Sacramento. It's kind of a little bit chillier. Last couple of days, we even had a little bit of rain and kind of cloudy, gloomy skies today. Still, fairly warm out, but definitely fall is in the air, as they say. So, anyways, yeah, Dean, I was just telling our viewers and listeners that we're hoping to expand our audience with this podcast real soon and get it out there on some of the other platforms. And also, one of the things I wanted to mention right out of the gate is, Dean, you and I were talking. We always talk after the show, everyone, and just kind of do a little recap. Well, how do you think it went? Did we, elaborate enough on this topic, or did we go on too long about that topic, or whatever? And something you said to me a few weeks ago, Dean, it just kind of stuck with me. And these last couple of weeks, I've really tried to take it to heart and get back to really what this podcast was meant to be all about. And that's helping people with the topics in our hashtags. Because I did a lot of shows from the road, like over the summer,
yeah,
And I remember you saying to me, like, Glenn, I'm concerned we might be losing some of your audience here. We're almost like turning this into a travel show because, that I was doing all these shows live from the road. We did live from Hollywood, live from Miami, live from Detroit, Lake Tahoe, Mount Shasta, all these places. And I do go back and watch each show one time, sometime during the week, just to look at it from a critique perspective, if you will. And like I was just saying, look for things like, oh, I kind of like the way we did that, or I didn't like the way that went, or whatever. And the point I'm making is, you're right, Dean. I think I kind of got a little bit away from what the main purpose of this show is really all about, and that is those hashtags that we have for the name Dare Me. This show is meant to be all about drugs, addiction, recovery, enlightenment, music, exercise. Not there they are. Thank you for putting them up at the top of the screen there, Dean. Not, necessarily Glenn's Travels. I did those shows from the road because I happened to be on the road on those Sundays, and I still wanted to do the show live. And some of them I think went fairly well, but again, it's not about my travels and all. This show is meant to be about those topics at the top of the screen. So last week, in case you missed the show, we had one all about fitness and exercise, and we had that boy G. My son was on the show with us live last week talking about exercise and fitness. That was a good one. I felt like we really got back to kind of what the core of this program was all about with that one. It was just me and him pretty much one on one the whole time. Tonight, this show is all about drugs, addiction, recovery, and trying to kick an opiate addiction. And that's what we've been promoting all week. We are going to talk about the things I mentioned at the top of the show, y'all. Just wanted to, kind of run my mouth for a little bit, give people a chance to kind of jump on, because we do promote that we go live at 6 o'clock here on the West Coast, 9 on the East Coast. And I see we've got several people online now. So I'm going to go ahead and do just a quick introduction about my story. Long story short, y'all, I got hooked on opiate pain medication after an injury that I had and a little cancer scare. And I had that stuff prescribed, and I ended up going on a 9-year run hooked on opiate pain medication. And I did them all. I did them all. It started off on, Norcos, Vicodins, and from there went to perks and oxys and Demerol and Dilaudid. And, at the end of it, I was snorting heroin because I couldn't get the pills anymore to help from getting dope sick. And no question in my mind that, I got a hold of some of them fake pills that looked real, that more than likely were laced with fentanyl. And I'm lucky I didn't die. And I'm so grateful that I can very humbly but proudly say today that I've been clean now for over 2.5 years. And we started this podcast last March. And like I mentioned, we're up to episode 29 now, and the whole idea was try to help some people, like we say at the beginning of the show in the introduction, that nice intro that Dean put together for us. If we can help even one person by the information we share and what we're doing with this show, then it's all worth it. And when I was kicking, I was looking for information online, as I often say on the show, Googling, YouTube, looking for information, how to kick opiate withdrawals and all that stuff. And there's some good stuff out there. There's a lot of stuff out there on YouTube and Google and things, but nothing like what we're doing with this show. It's a little bit different. And, our content, we hope, is entertaining for anyone who may come across this, but specifically, this show is kind of geared toward people who are struggling with some type of substance abuse disorder, addiction, whatever you want to call it, whether it's to opiates or any other drug for that matter, including booze and all the other stuff. So, anyhow, with all that said, Today, we are going to talk about my journey a lot with getting off of opiates and opiate pain medication because I kicked without going into treatment. Now, I'm not endorsing that one way or another. uh, do you? And I also want to put this disclaimer out there right out of the gate on this. I am no medical expert, nor will I ever claim to be a medical expert on this show. Please, 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 if you come across this show, you're looking to kick dope and you're hoping to find some answers, we can certainly provide some practical ideas, recommendations, information that hopefully will be useful to some people that come across it. But I always want to say I'm no medical expert. Probably always a good idea to consult with somebody from the medical field when you're thinking about getting off a dope, and make sure that you're not putting your life and health in jeopardy. What I can do is talk about my experience. I won't ever tell someone what to do or what not to do when it comes to trying to get off dope on this show, but I talk about a lot of things that I have been involved in, that I have done, that I have gone through, my experience. And if me talking about anything having to do with my experience with all that madness is helpful to anyone, to maybe, seek out additional information and try to get their life back on track, then I've accomplished what I've set out to do. So, with all that said, Dean, if we could bring up the slides, I'm going to start going through them because nothing on this show is scripted, y'all. I always have a real good idea of what it is we're going to talk about, but nothing's scripted. This is all kind of shoot from the hip, as they say. And so I do put a lot of work into each one of these shows, a lot of thought. If you're a regular viewer, listener, to the podcast, you know that we do have some structure to the show, and we ordinarily show quite a few slides. We have some videos and stuff, and so I put these slides together to kind of guide the discussion along the way. And I want to encourage anybody who may be watching or listening live, if you'd like to today, to feel free to call into the show. There's the telephone number. Thanks, Dean, for putting that up on the screen. You can call us live at that number, and if you're listening, not watching, it's 407-924-3946. That telephone number again to call in and talk to us live is 407 or 924-3946. 407-924-3946. And we can answer any questions you might have and talk some more about getting through opiate withdrawals. So this slide here, of course, what does it feel like to be dope sick? Getting through heroin withdrawal symptoms, which for me, quite frankly, I'm of the school of thought that an opiate is an opiate is an opiate when it comes to the withdrawal symptoms. Now, obviously, there's a big difference in the potency of various opiates. We're hearing so much about this crazy fentanyl craze right now and how just a small little amount can kill a person. I also believe that the potency of the opiate that a person may be using, the length of time a person may have been using opiates when they try to kick, the amount that they're taking on a daily basis when they decide to kick is all going to affect the horrible withdrawals you get, and the intensity, that's the word I was looking for, is going to affect the intensity of those withdrawals. Now, for me, I was on a 9-year run with that stuff, y'all. I was doing insane amounts of opiates. If I were to go back, say oh, God forbid, I had a freaking relapse and started to use the same amount of opiates today that I was using when I kicked, I'd be dead. like that because your body builds up a tolerance. It truly does. And once you kick, what does it feel like? It feels like you're going through fucking hell. If you're not familiar, you do get the cold sweats. I mean, you get the cold sweats when you're using that shit. It really fucks with your body temperature. Once you stop taking it, those withdrawal symptoms start to set on in, geez, less than 24 hours. And, some people will say, oh, you get through the withdrawals within, 48, 72 hours. I say, bullshit. It's been 2.5 years for me. I still get what they call pause, post acute withdrawal syndrome, where, sometimes some of those withdrawal symptoms will just pop up out of the middle of nowhere. The worst of it, I will say, is ordinarily, and for me, it was the case because I didn't kick just once, I kicked a few times, but there were a few times I went through withdrawals just because I couldn't get anything. So I'm very familiar with the feelings of withdrawal, and they suck. So yeah, you get the cold sweats and you get, what's referred to as restless leg syndrome. I often say they ought to call it restless limb syndrome because in addition to your legs kicking, my arms, I'd be laying there in bed sick as hell trying to watch TV just to keep my mind occupied, and right out of the blue my arms would just start flying. And you know why they call it kicking? Because your legs literally kick. That's where the phrase kicking dope came from, in case you didn't know, because your legs are just kicking uncontrollably. It is restless leg syndrome and restless arm and limb syndrome. For me, and I've heard this from so many others, um, I felt this sensation in my chest of what felt like a hamster on a wheel just running nonstop. I was so wound up and strung out, as they say. And then, of course, you get nauseous and you literally are puking. And then, in case you didn't know, opiates will bind you up. You do get constipated. If you're a person who maybe came across this show, stumbled across this show, or maybe saw some of our promos and decided to tune in and watch and, get a better idea of what this is all about, and you're still taking that shit, believe me, we know you are constipated. That shit stuffs you up. And when you stop taking it, without getting too descriptive. So now it's coming out of both ends. You got the cold sweats, you're kicking and your arms are flapping. You feel like you got a hamster wheel running in your chest. You got a fever. People say it's like having the flu on steroids. For me, it literally was like having the flu times 1,000. You can't sleep. You get insomnia, and it's horrible, horrible, horrible. You literally are like climbing the walls. Gosh, I could just go on and on. It's just no fun. You can't eat. You're starving, but you can't eat. This was the big one for me. You have zero energy, none at all whatsoever. I do remember it took, I mean, I'm laughing, but it ain't funny. It literally took everything I had on a couple of them days there at the beginning of kicking that last time. It took everything I had in the gas tank to just get out of bed to go to the bathroom, or try to make it into the kitchen, and no energy. So about the only goddamn thing I could eat was something that I could throw together quick and easy, like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and just force it down to try to get something in my stomach. It was just awful. Am listening to myself describe that, and it doesn't even seem to come close to how horrible it made me feel in the way I'm describing it, because I literally felt like I wanted to die. That's how bad it was. And it just doesn't seem like I'm even doing justice to the horrible, horrible feelings of withdrawal that I had in the way I'm describing it. It truly is the worst thing I've ever been through in my entire life. And as I mentioned briefly at the front end of the show, I'm a cancer survivor too. Now, thank God I didn't have to go through radiation, but I had bladder cancer and they had to remove about a golf ball sized tumor. And then I went through 6 months of chemo, not even close. It was horrible going through that, but compared to the opiate withdrawals, not even close. I finally started to feel a little bit better after a few days, but still horribly miserable. Then after about a week, I think I started to feel like maybe I could do this. Oh God, maybe I can come out the other side. But it really took about 10 days before I was finally able to start feeling human again, where I felt like I could possibly even like leave the house. Um, there's a long story I've told many times about how I kicked, where I kicked, that whole thing. I'm not going to get into that all tonight. If you want to hear my whole story, you can go back and watch or listen to some previous episodes of the show, or stay tuned, for shows to come. I always seem to end up back at telling that story. But for the sake of today, I just kind of wanted to go into those withdrawal symptoms and also say that if you're a person that's about to try and kick, I hope I'm not scaring you. I don't want to scare you off. I just want to prepare you for what's to come. And if I can get through it, you can get through it. Anybody can get through it. We do say that, once we get on the other side of it, we're like a fucking warrior. Well, I will say I feel like a warrior. Having gotten through those physical and mental feelings that you go through when you're going through opiate withdrawal, when you are able to finally get through it and feel like a human being again, and then get on with your life and become a productive, responsible member of society and do productive things, and realize, oh my God, I actually got through it. I did it. You feel like a warrior. And I'm at a point in my life now, I think, about little over 2.5 years clean, where I gotta remember that. I even thought that to myself this week. Yeah, I'm glad we're doing this topic on the show this week, because it's a good reminder to me of just how far I've come. I have shitty days like anybody else does, but on them shitty days, just remembering how far I've come and everything I went through to get to this point really, really helps me. So, once again, if you're a person who's come across this show, you're thinking about kicking dope, or maybe you're going through it right now, hang in there. That old saying I often repeat on this show: if you're going through hell, keep fucking going. You will come out the other side of it. So, anyhow, with all that said, that's a little bit of a description of what it felt like to be dope sick for me and going through, heroin withdrawals, opiate withdrawals, whatever the hell you want to call it. Let's move on to the next topic. Yeah, withdrawal symptoms, they will come on pretty quick. Like I said, depending on how much you're doing and how long you've been doing it, in my opinion, certainly will make a big difference on how soon they come on. But anything you might even read online will tell you it'll come on within about 24 hours. And it's a horrible thing what's going on right now. Not just with the whole fentanyl craze and everything else. But we talked about it on this show last week that even doctors now who've been prescribing opiate pain medication to patients, a lot of times it's the elderly too, who legit are taking these opiate pain medications, and now the doctors don't want the scrutiny that comes from the DEA and the feds, and they're cutting them off and throwing these poor elderly people into opiate withdrawal. And now they're out trying to find other doctors that'll write them prescriptions and things to that nature. So this whole opiate withdrawal thing, it's no joke, y'all. So anyhow, this one here, this slide here, I literally pulled from the news just a couple days ago. You can see it's dated September 29th. And this is from the Health News publication. And the headline, as you can see there, is Opiate Treatment Strategies Shift as some researchers are now advocating for higher, and I always get this word, it's a tough one to pronounce, buprenorphine. Yeah, they're advocating for higher buprenorphine dosages. And the reason for that is because of the fentanyl craze and because it is so potent. And if you didn't know what buprenorphine is, we're going to talk about it. A lot of people think it's the same thing as Suboxone. It's not. It's very similar, and buprenorphine is an ingredient in Suboxone, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But again, I want to assure y'all, I'm no medical expert. This is all stuff I've learned through the process that I went through. But basically, buprenorphine will block the opiate withdrawal symptoms, at the very least, reduce them. And that's why some of these advocates are recommending higher doses, because it's not keeping the withdrawal symptoms at bay the way you would think it would, because a lot of people that are going into what's called medication assisted treatment are so strung out on this very, very potent opiate fentanyl that the lower doses of buprenorphine just aren't enough to keep the opiate withdrawals at bay. Now, I don't want to go into any scientific explanation of it. If you want to look this stuff up, believe me, there's a ton of information out there. I know you got to be careful what you read online and stuff, but there's good information out there. And basically, it binds to the opiate receptors in the brain so that you don't go into the horrible withdrawal symptoms I talked about just, minutes ago. Doesn't give people a high, that euphoric high you get from various opiates, and opiate pain medication, but it does attach to the opiate receptors so that a person doesn't go into opiate withdrawals. So, anyhow, I thought it'd be interesting to show that story because that was in the news just a couple days ago. And, here's a little bit of information about it. I'll leave this on the screen for a moment. I'm not going to read it all to you, but, it's saying that people who are diagnosed with, opiate use disorder, were 20% more likely to abandon their treatment. Uh, compared to those on a higher dose. So it all has to do with the withdrawal symptoms, y'all. So anyway, interesting study published in this publication. I think it's pronounced the JAMA Network Open. So there's that. All right. And then I thought we'd show a picture here. And again, certainly not trying to trigger no one or anything else. We put that content warning on the front end of the show. But these are just for anybody who may be wondering, come across our show thinking about kicking dope, who's hooked on an opiate. What, you know, if you were prescribed this stuff, what it might look like, is a pill. They call it a sublingual, and you let it dissolve in your mouth, and the theory is that it will reduce the withdrawal symptoms. Now, I talked about Suboxone. as well. So, Suboxone has buprenorphine in it, and it's also combined with naloxone. Now, naloxone is also known as Narcan, and it will basically it's an antidote for someone with an opiate, overdose going on. And so, anyways, the combination of the buprenorphine and the naloxone will, in theory, block the opiate withdrawal symptoms I described in detail earlier in the show, and also block any euphoric feeling that a person might get. So the Suboxone is ordinarily taken in these little strips, and so these strips, again, are what they call sublingual, where a person puts them under their tongue and they dissolve. And it is considered a medication assisted treatment option for people who want to get off of opiates. I didn't really go into this when I was describing the opiate withdrawal symptoms, and I think I should take just a moment to talk about it briefly right now. Because a lot of times people who don't understand opiate addiction will be like, man, just put that shit down and be done with it. That is one of the biggest stumbling blocks, is the anxiety that a person gets because they know they're about to go into full-blown withdrawal symptoms. Because when someone does finally kick an opiate addiction, like I talked about even briefly earlier in the show, it ain't the first time. It is not the first time getting ready to be dope sick, because people will overuse their meds. They'll, if they're getting prescribed it, and they run out before their script is up for renewal, and they don't want to tell their doctor, because then their doctor is going to think they're a dope fiend and that they weren't using it properly. And you have this legit fear that if they think you're fiending, they're going to cut you off completely. Where some people will just tell the doctor, hey, man, I need more. I ran out a week ahead of time. Others don't want to tell the doctor that. Um, and then that's when people will start turning to others that they know take it and start trading back and forth, and then next thing you know, you're getting it on the streets, and next thing you know, you're taking other stuff. You get the idea. But the point I'm making is people get such a fear, such anxiety of going through the opiate withdrawals, that they just become like desperate. And so with myself, y'all, I should say this, that for me, I never went on Suboxone. That would have been my next step. I never went on Methadone, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. That was an option on the table too. I would have tried subs first before I would have went to Methadone, for reasons we're going to talk about in a minute. But I never did either one of them. I had people tell me, Glenn, it could be helpful, but people I know, and again, I'm not saying this from any medical perspective, I'm no medical expert. I'm talking about uh, recommendations I got from people who had been on this stuff. Suboxone told me, Glenn, it can help you. It'll get you off the shit. But coming off of that can be harder than coming off of the damn pills or the heroin or the other opiates that you're taking to get high on now. This will fill that void so you don't go into withdrawal, and get all those horrible withdrawal symptoms. But if the day comes where you want to kick that too, it can be harder coming off of that. Now, again, I'm not saying that from a medical perspective. I'm saying that from uh, people talking to me about it who had been on it and been through being dope sick and got off it, and said it was harder getting off that than it was the pills. But in any case, if you're a person that is on opiates and you're thinking about trying to get off, and maybe you don't know about what Suboxone is, there's a little picture of it. That's a little brief description of what it's like. And believe me, I got myself educated on it. I just never went down that road. I used something else called Kratom, which we're going to talk about here in just a moment. Before we do, though, I wanted to show this because there are different doses of Suboxone strip types. And it kind of goes back to that article we showed just a little bit earlier there that just came out a couple days ago, where there's certain researchers, advocates, whatever you want to call it, are recommending higher dosages of buprenorphine and, I'm sure, in turn, Suboxone, because the lower dosages just aren't keeping the withdrawal symptoms at bay for people who are trying to kick fentanyl now, which is so potent. And I know the print is kind of small and fine and hard to read there, but again, if you're really serious about this topic, y'all, you can Google, Suboxone strip types. You'll, I'm sure, come across this. But it kind of walks you through how, people will start off at 2 milligrams. We saw even that bottle of buprenorphine, and it goes all the way up in this to 12 milligrams, and you get these different strips, and this kind of what they look like. So just thought we'd show that, y'all. And then this is a how to use a Suboxone strip kind of tutorial. And again, I know it's hard to read, y'all. It's very small, fine print. I still thought that I'd show this on the program today, though. So if you are a person that is thinking about trying to get off opiates, trying to kick opiates, that this type of information is out there, y'all. This is all just stuff I pulled off the internet. Now, I get it again. I'll say it. I know you got to be careful with everything you read on the internet. This is legit information right here, y'all. How to use a Suboxone strip. And if you do get prescribed Suboxone, you will be walked through all that with your doctor, your pharmacist, whatever the hell. Uh, I'm the type of person that likes to get educated as well on my own. And this, I think, would help someone with that anxiety. Get yourself a little educated ahead of time. If you're getting ready to jump off, maybe you're getting the shit from the doctor, but he don't know you're getting it on the side or off the street and all that. And you do want to jump off, but you're really going through anxiety about telling your doctor, get yourself educated as much as you can before you take this to the doctor. Read about this, and you'll have basic knowledge and understanding of what it's like, what Suboxone is, what it's like to use that. Dean, looks like you wanted to chime in on something there.
I'm just, why is there a picture of a dog?
I think that's part of their logo, bro. The
Oh, okay.
confidant. See up in the top there. This is from
I know. It just seems like it's dog medicine, but
yeah, I don't
just
know. No, well, I guess yeah, that makes sense. I hadn't
I
thought of it
mean,
that
if I
way.
just kind of glossed over it, I'd be looking, okay, there's a hand, you're gonna
Well,
and
and
then
you
what are
know
you gonna
what?
do?
The
You give it to the
strips that
dog.
they show in this reminded me of like a Keebler cracker.
It looks like a graham cracker,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, but it's
Oh, you're gonna
actually
give graham crackers to your dog. So if
yeah,
I
it's
don't
a
read English,
Suboxone
then
strip. No, I think that's just their logo, and
uh,
maybe I've talked on this show about how when I do reels promoting the show, some of the most popular ones are ones with my dog Jazzy, and so maybe that was their idea with their logo and
yeah,
marketing, is that by using a dog they get more attention. But interesting observation.
I just
But nonetheless, y'all, just wanted to show that. And again, if you Google how to use a Suboxone strip, I would venture to say you'll come across this and be able to read all that fine print. So, moving along, y'all, there are some myths. That's a hard word to say. Myths. There's some myths out there about using Suboxone to treat opiate addiction. Now, this is a good place for me to interject, y'all, that I am a big advocate of what is known as harm reduction, medication assisted treatment. I try on this show not to give too many opinions because I don't want to alienate anyone. We do talk about different things, sometimes having to do with politics, but I'm not necessarily a conservative, a liberal. I described myself on the show many times as more of an independent. For me, it depends on the issue. It depends on the candidate, the person, things to that nature. Yeah, I cuss and swear on here sometimes, but that's kind of sort of by design, y'all, because when you're trying to get through to people who are thinking about kicking opiates or going through an opiate addiction, you kind of want to be at their level. And believe me, there ain't no holds barred when you're at that point and you're going through opiate withdrawals, especially when it comes to language. So we don't sugarcoat anything on this show, and we try to keep it real and raw, which is where people are at when they're at that stage. But nonetheless, in the 12-step communities, and there's a shit ton of articles out there online you can read about on this topic. You got to remember, and I'm not picking on any 12-step program. I often say on this show, I'm a 12-step guy, NAAA, fucking A, whatever. I go to meetings to help me stay clean. And I want to say hi to someone in our chat room, by the way. Lori Kucher just checked in and says, "Hey, sorry she's been
Mm.
working Sunday nights, but peace, Lori. We're glad to have you back with us on the Dare Me podcast. And give us a call sometime, too. We'd love to talk to you on the telephone, maybe. There's that number up on the screen, 407-924-3946, for anyone who may like to call in. If you've been through opiate withdrawal, been dope sick, call us up and tell us about it. We want to hear some more stories on this show. If you're thinking about kicking, hey, you can be anonymous. We'd love to talk to you. So, anyway, there's that number. If you'd like to call in, you're more than welcome, y'all. So, yeah, I am a big advocate of harm reduction. And the reason I brought up the 12-step programs is, for example, in Narcotics Anonymous, NA, that is a program of complete abstinence from all mind or mood altering chemicals. AA is a program of complete abstinence from alcohol. And it's interesting, there's, there's this almost like this little rivalry between the two programs, sometimes. And it's like, people who get caught up in that are just kind of naive, quite frankly. I've been around the block with them programs, y'all. I'm 61 years old. I walked into my first 12-step meeting just shy of 25. I didn't go into my whole story earlier in the show, but I've had a long struggle with substance abuse disorder addiction my whole life. This ain't my first rodeo with getting and living and staying clean. I got clean as a younger man, stayed clean for long periods of time, couple relapses, and I'm living clean and sober again now. Some people take issue with me even saying clean and sober. Like there's a difference. I don't get caught up in all that fucking madness. I try to talk in layman's terms for anybody who may be new thinking about trying this clean and sober lifestyle. And people do make a differentiation between alcohol and other drugs. Yeah, we all know alcohol is a drug, but people tend to think of it differently for whatever fucking reason. It's a societal thing. Alcohol's an accepted drug that's legal in society and all that bullshit. It is a drug, but I try to talk again in layman's terms. So I do use phrases like mixing clean and sober when, in the NA community, clean is all inclusive, and they, yeah, some of the I call them the gurus, the think they know it alls, don't like you using mixed language sometimes, but I don't get caught up in all that bullshit, y'all. The point I'm making is there are a circle of people in certain 12-step programs that are not fans of harm reduction, are not fans of medication assisted treatment. and quite frankly, and I am giving an opinion here, in my opinion, are living in the dark ages, living in the past, man. If you know the history, which I do very well, by the way, that is a topic I'm very educated on, is the history of the 12 step programs. The AA 12 step program was formed in 1935. NA followed suit in 1953 when those 12 steps from AA were adapted into NA. And there are people who just believe it's all or nothing when it comes to living that program, if you will. Well, you know what? Things have changed a lot now, y'all. The drugs out on the street now ain't no fucking joke. This is not the 70s peace, love, and happiness, and let's sit in a circle and have fun and smoke a joint and pass it around the circle. No, now you got fucking fentanyl out on the streets, and the drug dealers are mixing this shit up in the kitchen sink, making it look like real pills when they're fake as hell, and they know people are going to die, and they just don't give a fuck. They want money. That's all that matters to them. And so now you really got to look at this from a different perspective. It is not easy kicking opiates when you're hooked on that shit. Or, I'm focusing on opiates on the program today, but, we can talk about other drugs too, crack cocaine and, whatever else, meth, whatever, and that shit's all being laced with fentanyl now too. So the point I'm making, y'all, is there are some myths out there about using what we call medication assisted treatment options. And one of them is Suboxone. So if you're a person on medication assisted treatment, my opinion is you have every fucking right to be sitting in a 12 step meeting as anybody else. Don't ever, I learned this, y'all. I will never, ever, ever let somebody else drive me out of my motherfucking 12 step program. I paid for that goddamn seat. Most expensive seat you'll ever pay for in your life if you're a real one. And if some cocky ass thinks they know it all motherfucker wants to talk shit and say you ain't really clean because you're taking subs or methadone, fuck them. And yeah, I'll say it right now. Fuck you if that's you, because you might just drive somebody out of that room to say, fuck, this ain't for me, and go back out and get high again and fucking die. So just stop if that's you. Please just fucking stop it. Okay? Do you? And if somebody's on medication assisted treatment and they come in a meeting and they feel the need to talk about it and share about it, leave them the fuck alone if you don't agree with them. Keep your big fat fucking mouth shut. Yeah, I feel strongly about it, man, because I know people that have died who have turned their back on NAAA fucking A. I ain't picking on no single program. I'm an NA guy. I go to AA, NA, it don't matter to me. But I've seen these assholes chase people out of meetings who are new, and they become embarrassed because somebody will talk shit about them, maybe not even at the meeting while it's going on, but afterwards or whatever the fuck. Man, get fucking real. It's 2023, y'all, not 1953 or not 1935. So I'll come down off my soapbox. Obviously, I got a little fired up there because I have strong feelings about it, because people are out there dying. Could have happened to me, y'all. So let's talk about some of these myths. That's how I feel about harm reduction and medication assisted treatment. If somebody can take this stuff right here and stay off of the street drugs that could kill them and become a responsible, productive member of society, get back on with their life and be there for their family, how the hell could somebody talk shit about that and say, oh, you ain't really clean? It's the same thing as fucking taking insulin if you're a diabetic. It helps you. What, you going to tell a diabetic that they're not clean because they're taking insulin? What the fuck kind of mentality is that, man? So anyway, going down that rabbit hole again. So let's talk about some of these myths. All right, y'all. Number one, like I was just talking about. Here's a myth. You aren't really in recovery if you're on Suboxone. Well, I'm not going to sit here and read the whole thing to you, but we're going to leave it up on the screen for a minute. So if you come across this, recorded version of this program, you can pause it and read it. And this is all available right online too, y'all. Y'all can Google this, the 5 myths of, using Suboxone. And like it says though, and I'm glad it even references the AA mentality in here. While it depends on how you define recovery, how do you define recovery? Like it says, in the 1930s era, AA influenced abstinence-based models that have dominated the past century of addiction care are generally giving way to more modern conceptions of recovery that do encompass the use of medications such as Suboxone. And again, I said I wasn't going to read the whole thing to you, and I'm not going to, y'all, but get over it if you're one of them idiots that thinks using some kind of medication to help through your withdrawal symptoms, your addiction is not really being in recovery. What a joke, man. So, anyway, here's myth 2. People frequently misuse Suboxone. And again, the reality, as it says there, is Suboxone, like any opiate and many other meds, can be misused. However, because it's only a partial I always have trouble pronouncing that word. Agonist. I thought it was antagonist, but maybe they have it spelled wrong. I don't know. It doesn't attach to the opiate receptors the way street drugs do, or the stuff you get prescribed from a doctor. And like it says there, does not cause the kind of euphoria that people get hooked on, like I did. So it's very difficult for people to misuse this. Now, if somebody may debate me on this, who's used Suboxone, and I hear stories all the time, man. I saw an article not long ago, somebody smuggling subs into the prisons and shit. And people do say it gives you energy and get you high, whatever. So, I believe there is a certain amount of misuse of it out there, like it says right here in this article, like any other meds. It can be misused. Does that mean it's not a viable option to help someone through withdrawals, through their recovery? Of course not. So there you go. Of course, it is an option. So, myth 3, it's as easy to OD on subs as it is to overdose with other opiates, when the reality is it's extremely difficult to OD on subs alone. Uh, and it goes on in this article to talk about how a lot of times if someone does OD and subs are in the system, it's usually they're combined with some other type of drug as well. And they're certainly not at the potency level of some of these other opiates that it mentions here in the article, like heroin, oxycodone, morphine, or whatever, that slows the breathing down. So, myth 4, Suboxone isn't treatment for addiction if you aren't getting therapy along with it. Again, that's bullshit. It, is certainly recommended that if you're going through any type of substance abuse, recovery program, withdrawals, whatever, yeah, that confide in people, whether it's a therapist, a counselor, psychiatrist, doctor, going to 12-step meetings, whatever the fuck, trying to work on, all those feelings that come back to you. Because there is that old saying, once you get clean and sober, there's good news and not so good news. The good news is all your feelings and emotions come back. The not so good news is all your feelings and emotions come back. So how you going to process and deal with that shit so you don't get a case of the fuckets and just go out and get high again to numb your feelings again? So yeah, certainly it's recommended that you talk with other people, but it doesn't mean you're not in a recovery mode. If you're taking subs, but not getting some type of therapy along with it. Some people like doing things dolo, especially in the beginning, till you get comfortable with, taking the medication, still kind of feeling it out, how it makes you feel, how it doesn't make you feel, what have you. So, anyway, that busts that myth. Number five, Suboxone should only be taken for a short period of time. That is a myth. Now, again, I'm not going to read to y'all here, but if you do read through this, and basically, and other things I've read about this topic too, are it really comes down to the individual and consulting, hopefully, with their healthcare person, their doctor, whatever, uh, to decide what's best for them. Now, for me, I wanted to be 100% drug free, y'all. That's the mentality I come from. Like I said, I'm an NA guy. I grew up in that program. I've been going to meetings in that program since I was 24 years old. And I just love the concept of complete abstinence. That's how I live my life. I take no mind or mood altering chemicals. I don't condemn anyone who takes medication assisted or is on medication assisted treatment. That's what I was getting so fired up about earlier. But for me, I did use Kratom, which we're going to talk about here in just a moment, y'all. But I took it with an intention to help me through the withdrawals and then weaned off of that and jumped off. And so the point I'm making, it's the same thing here with Suboxone. People have to decide for themselves, do they want to stay on it for a short period of time? Start off at a higher dose, like it recommended in that one article, up to sometimes I think it was, well over 12 milligrams. Uh, and then wean down. But if you read on in this article and find other stuff out there, there's people who've been taking this stuff for years and they swear by it. It has gotten them, they were able to get off of the street drugs. They were able to get off the prescribed opiate medication that, gives that euphoria, but loses its effectiveness. You build up a tolerance where you have to take more and more and more to get that euphoric feeling. But by taking subs, they don't get thrown into the horrible withdrawals. It makes them become productive, responsible members of society. They're able to return to their families, return to work, and they swear by it. Why would we ever discourage someone or condemn someone if you're, one of them 12-step purists, well, they're not really clean if they're taking that shit. Dude, fuck you. If this is keeping somebody alive and making them a responsible, productive member of society, more power to them. So there are people who say, oh, they'll take it for the rest of their life. So again, the myth is, and it is a myth, that it should only be taken for a short period of time. Some people may be on it for the rest of their life. And you know what? If it keeps them safe, keeps them alive, makes them productive, more power to them. Do you, bro? Do your research, though. So, anyway, there's, those five myths that I thought we'd talk about on this show. And just so you know, this is the author, by the way, of the information that we just read. I thought it'd be important to give it a source. This guy, is a primary care physician, educator, cannabis specialist, by the way, at Harvard Medical School, a certified health and wellness coach, and he's author of books and stuff. So this information ain't coming from just some schmuck, y'all. You get the idea. Thought I'd show that for sake of credibility. So let's shift gears and talk a little bit about methadone now, because if you're involved in the recovery community or are even remotely familiar with people struggling with addiction, substance abuse disorder, whatever you want to call it, you've heard of methadone before. And it is the older of the medication assisted options out there, including buprenorphine and Suboxone and Kratom and others. And so the thing about methadone is, if someone chooses to go this route to help them stay off of the street, opiates, and heroin is where methadone really kind of seems to have been connected. People getting off of heroin and, years gone by, they would go to the meth clinic. And, this is how it still is set up. People have to go to this clinic on a daily basis. Once they, go through all the preliminaries, you got to talk to the doctor, or the person at the clinic or whatever. Hey, I'm a heroin addict, I'm an opiate addict, whatever. I want to get off, but I'm so scared of going through the withdrawals. I've heard about methadone. What's this all about? So, there's this powder and they mix it up with, some kind of fruit flavored type, solution. And this is basically it. You go there every day and you drink this shit. And, obviously there's a whole process you have to go through. You got to, prove it you and all that other stuff. And they keep records. It's not like just anybody can show up one day and say, hey, can I get some meth? No, you got to do it, legit and all that kind of stuff. And so, what is methadone? And here's just a little description. And again, for people who've been around the block, you already know this stuff. But as I've said many times, we get new people watching and listening to this show every single week. Someone just stumbles on, sees we're live, they click on it. Someone's looking for information about how to get through opiate withdrawals, what have you, because we put a lot of marketing material out there each week leading up to the show. And so, for someone who may not be familiar, here's a little bit of a description. It is a prescription opioid drug. And the main difference between opioids and opiates, that's all the same fucking thing, if you ask me, is opioids are synthetically made, man made, if you will, opiate medications, where the actual opiates like heroin would be from the poppy seed plant. You get the idea. So, as it says here, opioids interact with opiate receptors in the brain and bring about a range of responses from feelings of pain to relaxation, pleasure, contentment. Methadone is taken as a replacement drug for heroin and other opioids as part of treatment for dependence on those dangerous drugs, including fentanyl, by the way. So, here's some of the advantages that methadone maintenance has over heroin use. And, the word heroin's there, but take it out and put your word in. You want to put fentanyl in there. You want to put, Vicodins in there, Percocet, Oxys, whatever the fuck, it's opiate. Okay. And, it's unlikely to result in an overdose. Okay. On its own, it's very monitored. You have to go to the clinic and drink that little solution I just showed you. Uh, Keeps a person stable and doesn't throw them into full blown withdrawal symptoms that I described while they're trying to make positive changes in their life, trying to get their thinking straight. Because that's another thing. I talked about how you have no energy and all that other stuff when you're going through the withdrawals. Well, your thinking is all fucked up too. It's so fuzzy you can't even think straight because you're so fucking miserable. Well, at least when you're taking one of these medication assisted, treatment options, these things we're talking about, subs, methadone, you're not in full blown withdrawal, so you can kind of sort of think straight. Okay. So, anyways, that's another advantage. Health problems are reduced or avoided, especially those related to injecting. If someone's shooting dope, reduces their chances of getting HIV, Hep B, Hep C, skin infection, vein problems, all that other stuff. Uh, but they don't go into the full blown withdrawals, which is what ordinarily would drive someone back to using. They just can't stand the withdrawals. They're horrible, y'all. But by taking methadone, they're trying to think straight. They're not doing this harm to their body. The doses are required only once a day, sometimes even less often because the effects are long lasting. And then, of course, it's much, much cheaper than heroin to not just the person, but society as a whole, y'all. So there are advantages to methadone. Again, for me, I never used it. That was third on my list of options that I thought about for me. I'm not telling you use it. I'm not telling you don't use it. for me, when I got to the point of being serious about trying to kick, I wanted to do it on my own with nothing. And then the things I thought about were Kratom, Suboxone, and Methadone. I didn't want to go to the Methadone route because, quite frankly, I didn't want to have to go to a fucking clinic every day to get something, you know? And that's something we're going to talk about a little bit more on the show in a minute. And then the Suboxone, like I said, I was seriously thinking about taking it. However, I had people tell me who had gone down that road but were clean now, saying, Glenn, it can help you. Just be aware that sometimes getting off of that shit can be even harder than getting off the actual opiates you were taking. So I went the Kratom route, which I tried not to do for a while, but the withdrawals just got so fucking unbearable for me that I did use Kratom to help take the edge off of it. And we're going to talk about it again in a little bit here, y'all. But before we do talk about Kratom, I wanted to mention this because I talked about how, people have to go to a clinic every day to get their methadone dose. Whereas with Suboxone, they can prescribe you subs and you take home this box of sub strips and you're good for however long it may be, couple of weeks, a month, whatever fucking amount they give you until you have to go get the re-up. But with the methadone clinics, they make you go every fucking day. Well, this lady right here was the focus of this article by this guy, Andrew Joseph, from last December. And he talks about under new rules, meth clinics can offer more what they call take home doses. And the reason for that, if you go read this article, it's in Stat. That's the name of the publication. You can see it in the upper left corner. It's a publication called Stat. And this author, Andrew Joseph, did this article that they loosened the requirements of going to the clinic daily and allow people to have some at home doses during the COVID pandemic because they felt it was safer to let people take, at home doses than to have them congregating and potentially exposing each other to the COVID virus. So the federal rules on that were loosened, but a lot of these clinics didn't take advantage of it, or for very specific reasons I'm going to talk about in a minute, wouldn't do it. But the girl we just saw, her name is Danielle Russell, and she's been very open about her use of heroin and methadone, and she calls herself a poster child for methadone. She's been taking it for more than a decade, and the medication, which is considered one of the most effective treatments for opioid addiction, has helped her move past the heroin she used to use. And get this, y'all, read this last sentence in that first paragraph. She finished a series of degrees and is now a PhD student in justice studies at Arizona State University. So I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. For those of y'all who say someone utilizing medicated assisted treatment is not really in recovery, fuck you. Fuck you. Yeah, I said it. Yeah, I said it. Because there are these people in some of these 12-step rooms that talk that shit and they chase people out of the rooms who go back to the street drugs and fucking die. When you got examples like this Danielle Russell here, who has been on meth for 10 years, calls herself the poster child for this type of treatment for addiction, and has gone on to earn a series of degrees, a PhD now, and is a responsible, productive member of society, is there for her family, living a healthy, productive life. How in the hell could somebody talk shit about someone on methadone or Suboxone who is living a productive life? Give it a break, y'all. You need to come down off of your soapbox. Some of y'all may be saying, geez, Glenn, chill with the F bomb, chill with getting so wired up about it. No, I'm not gonna, y'all, because you're making people go back out when you talk that shit and then they get a hold of some bullshit pills and fucking die. Stop. Just stop it. Do you. and try not to talk shit about people who are doing them in their journey to try to get and live clean and sober. And if that involves harm reduction and medication assisted treatment, let them be. Okay. So, anyway, y'all, I'm sorry. I just get fired up about it because it is a matter of life and death. And Danielle, God bless you. And thank you for being so open about sharing your story. Now, the thing about this story that's interesting is she was interviewed about them being more lax about what they call take home doses during the pandemic. And the thing of it is a lot of these clinics wouldn't do it. And people looked into, well, why not? Because this is one of the reasons a lot of people fall off who are on methadone is they get sick of having to go to the fucking clinic every single day. And, there's people who will say, well, but it's a good thing because it provides them structure and accountability and they have to go every single day. And I get that maybe in the beginning, maybe for the first month or so. But in Danielle's case, fuck, she's been on the shit 10 years, y'all. And, let's take an approach, I think, of, and thank you, Lori says, you tell him, Glenn, you're amazing. Well, I appreciate that, Lori. I just am very passionate about this topic, obviously, in our chat room, Lori. Thank you. But the point is for some of these meth clinics, people did some research on it, and the reason they wouldn't allow some of their clients to take more take-home doses is because they can bill insurance or charge patients, because many of them clinics take cash for more services, from drug tests to counseling sessions when people come in more frequently. So it can very often all be about the money. Follow the almighty dollar, as they say, y'all. And so, then you got the other side of it. In the bottom paragraph, one of the guys for the clinic says, well, he calls such criticisms disingenuous and says the clinics provide services in the best interest of patients and they have to consider legal and licensing liability and all that, blah, 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 blah. But the point I'm making, y'all, is if making somebody go to a fucking clinic every single day to get their dose of methadone, when you got people like Danielle who've been on it for 10 years, you get what I'm saying, y'all. It's bullshit, when someone has proven that they have become a productive member of society again. They've been religious about, coming to the clinic, taking their medication, they're back to work, back with their family, living life. Give them some more at home doses, because that's where people get fed up and they say, fuck this, what is this? You're treating me like a little kid, it's too parental is the phrase I heard, it's like these are grown ass people trying to live their life. And it's like you're under the fucking thumb of these people. I got to tell y'all, man, that's one thing I am so fucking grateful about being clean again, is I am not under the thumb of any fucking doctor, insurance company, people at the pharmacy that fucking fill your order and treat you like a fucking dope fiend and chasing that shit. Oh my God, I don't miss that fucking shit. Talk about having to swallow your fucking pride. God, I hated it, man. I hated it. And when I first started taking that shit, you could get a prescription for a couple of months. You could get one refill. And then they fucking changed it where you had to go to your doctor every month to get a re-up. And of course, the doctors fucking loved that. They probably lobbied for that shit on the DL, because then they got to bill their clients every fucking month to get them the re-up instead of every other month. And it was just a big fucking joke, man. The one I used to go to, they just parade people through like fucking cattle. And you have to go sit there for a fucking hour, wait your turn. They'd go in, they'd fucking weigh you and take your blood pressure to make it seem like they were doing something, when it was all a big fucking you know uh farce. And then they'd write you your script, and oh boy, as soon as you got that script, oh, race to the fucking pharmacy, and then at the end they would call them into the pharmacy or over the computer. Oh my god, I don't fucking miss that shit, bro. Oh my god, I don't miss that fucking shit. And so that's the point I'm making with this whole thing of the methadone, which, like I said, I never went down that road, y'all. It was an option on the table, but I certainly have empathy, sympathy, I'll even say, for people who do go to those methadone clinics on the daily. And hopefully, you know, God, I don't even know, man. So what effort it would take to get some of these clinics to start giving people more take home doses. I guess, the old squeaky wheel gets the grease thing. If you've been going to the clinic on the daily for however long and you really want to start getting more take homes, just don't let it die, don't let it die. And yeah, anyway, I just thought we'd talk about that, y'all, because I think it's very interesting. So we've talked about buprenorphine. We've talked about Suboxone. We've talked about methadone. All very viable options to help you through opiate withdrawals if you're a person thinking about jumping off, thinking about trying to get through the withdrawals, thinking about getting on with your life, living clean and sober. Those are medication assisted treatment options. And I'm not telling you to try any of them. I'm not telling you not to try any of them. We're just talking about them, y'all, because they are options out there. There's a shit ton of other information, shows, podcasts, books, whatever the fuck out there on all this stuff. But I just thought we'd take an episode of this show to talk about it here too. And if we have someone who is new to this area in their life, hopefully we're providing some information that'll at least be helpful to you to perhaps pursue additional information, get yourself educated, and make a good educated decision on whether or not any of these options are right for you. So let's talk about this one, Kratom. It's very controversial, y'all. Very controversial. Uh, I again want to put my disclaimer out there. I'm not recommending anybody use Kratom. I'm not recommending anybody don't use Kratom. All I'm going to do is share my story. I did use Kratom. And the reason I used Kratom is because I was doing research online. Google, YouTube, you name it, how to get through opiate withdrawals, how to, help with opiate withdrawals, whatever the fuck, and that's where I first learned about Kratom. This is going back several years now, because like I said, I've been clean over 2.5, and I was really legit, really hard trying to get clean for at least a few years before I actually did. And then there were times where I would just run out of pills, and couldn't get no dope, and I would go into full blown withdrawals until I could get, my prescription refilled or get some from, somebody I traded with or get some off the street or whatever the fuck. But there were times where I couldn't get anything. And so that's when I first tried Kratom, just to try to help get me through those stretches of what sometimes would turn into like a whole fucking week before I could get anything else. And I did all my research on it and I decided to try it. For me, one of the things I read about it was true, that it does not take the opiate withdrawal symptoms away completely. And I've never come across anything anybody's put out there saying that it does. It takes the edge off of them. And one of the things I read was that on average, if you were to put a percentage on it, it'll take about 70%, if that's a way to put it, of the withdrawal symptoms away. And I think that's a pretty darn accurate number for me. Didn't take them away completely. That's for goddamn sure. Oh man. Especially like the cold sweats, that racy feeling I got in my chest, which I think to a certain extent was even exasperated by taking the kratom because it kind of, I think added to that. But Nonetheless, there were days, y'all, where I had to fucking go to work. I had commitments that I had to keep, and I had no fucking dope. See, what would happen a lot is you would get somebody. I had a guy, man, God bless him, man. But he was like one of my plugs. Say, "Oh yeah, man, we got to hook up tomorrow. There's like 120 coming in, bro. I'll have them like at 8 in the morning, and I'd have like fucking 12 pills. I'd be like, cool. I'd fucking go at it, man, the day before, and they'd all be gone. And I'd wake up the next day thinking, cool, man, I got the hookup coming in, and fucking nothing. Crickets. Then couldn't even get a hold of the guy. No answer, no nothing for a couple days. And then finally, oh yeah, bro, that fell through or whatever. And I did that to myself over and over and over so many fucking times. I'm the only one, right? I know there's other people hooked on that shit that have done the same goddamn thing because I've heard them say it many, 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 many times in meetings I've been to. And so, anyway, y'all, point I'm making is I would use up everything I had and then have nothing for days. And so the kratom would help me to be able to, at least, like I said, you have no fucking energy when you're dope sick. It would at least give me the energy to get up out of bed and get to work. Of course, I was combining it with other things like fucking Adderall and Xanax. I was a fucking trash can for a while just trying to survive. That ain't even fucking living, man. That's just surviving, getting through all that bullshit. Blows my mind the shit that I fucking did and somehow managed to think was a good idea at the time. Like I often say, I joke, but I'm quite serious. I'm a pretty smart guy, pretty sharp guy. When I got my head on straight, I'm an educated man. I think, oh my God, what the fuck was going on in my head at that time to think taking all them fucking drugs was a good idea? But that's what happens, man. You get so fucking hooked on that shit and such anxiety about going into withdrawals, you'll fucking do almost anything to avoid it. And so, anyway, this study here, y'all, I thought we'd show. And it's a little bit of an older one. But there's a shit ton of stuff out there. You can see this is some research that was done at the University of Florida College of Pharmacy. And, it says that they did this kratom tea study because a lot of people will drink a tea made of kratom. And we're going to talk about different ways you can use kratom in a minute here. But it says as the opioid epidemic continues to grip the nation, killing tens of thousands, a new study led by researchers at U of S suggests kratom could be a prime treatment option for opioid dependence. Now, like I said, y'all, when we first started talking about kratom, it's very controversial. I actually was telling Dean before the show today when we talked about kratom in an earlier episode, not too far into the show. I think we're a few episodes in. I posted some things on, I'm always posting stuff about the show on different social media platforms. And I posted some things on Twitter, what was Twitter at the time. Now it's X, about kratom. And man, I got some pretty pointed comments. Nothing real mean and nasty or calling me names or anything. Uh, but I did get a comment from a lady whose son died from taking kratom. And she posted something on my timeline. My son died from taking kratom. And there are certainly stories out there like that, y'all. And we're going to talk a little bit more about it in a minute because there's a shit ton of lawsuits out there right now against some of these kratom distributors and people who've sold kratom to people who have taken it and died. So again, it is very controversial, y'all. There's studies like this done by a reputable group, the University of Florida, saying it can be helpful. And then even for myself, when I finally, was ready to kick and start researching information and came across the stuff I did about kratom, believe me, if you go on Google or YouTube and just type in kratom, you will come across a shit ton of information about it. There's so much information out there about kratom on both sides. there are people out there who have gone through opiate withdrawals and come out the other side of it using kratom who swear by it. Say, literally say it saved their life. Then you've got people on the other end of the spectrum who say it killed their loved one, that their loved one died because they took kratom. So, again, y'all, I want to clarify once again I'm no medical expert. I would never tell someone to try kratom, use kratom. I would never tell someone not to use kratom. All I'm trying to do is put the information out there, y'all, for people to digest and consider if they're thinking about getting off of opiates like I was, and also share my experience because I did, for me, choose to use it. And for me, thank God it didn't kill me. I'm not saying it couldn't have. For me, it helped. It definitely helped get me through the withdrawals. I still had withdrawal symptoms. They weren't as intense as certainly they would have been and were those first few days because I used it for a couple weeks after. I didn't use it the first few days I was going through it. I used it after that to help get me through the next few weeks, and then I weaned down off of it. I was taking a lot of that shit at first, but then thank God I was taking it with an intention of helping me get through the withdrawals and then wean down off of it because my feeling was I ain't going through this fucking hell, this misery to get hooked on something else. I did not want to do that. Now, again, I ain't judging nobody else. If you're taking subs, you're taking meth, you're still taking kratom, even if you've been off the opiates for a long, long time. Do you? More power to you. I'm just saying, for me, I did not want to give up one thing to get hooked on another. And it is said that you can become addicted to kratom. I believe that. I do believe that people get hooked on kratom and also that you do go through withdrawal symptoms when you get off of kratom. So, what the hell is kratom? Let's talk a little bit more about it. Okay. It's considered to be an herbal supplement. And I thought we'd show this article. This is from NPR, National Public Radio, where they did an article last July that focused in on these lawsuits I mentioned. There's a whole string of lawsuits after people have taken it and died. The thing of it is, though, it's not considered like a narcotic, a drug. It's a herbal supplement, and it comes from the coffee family. Believe it or not, you can see in the picture here. There's a scoop of powdered kratom after it's been dried up and ground up. I'm going to show some pictures of the actual kratom plant in a moment here. But here's some information again about some of the lawsuits going on because I want y'all to understand the depth of this. There's people who swear by it that it's helped save their life, but then you've got in Washington State, they awarded a $2.5 million verdict in the very first kratom wrongful death trial in the United States. And so on the left, y'all, you'll see here it describes what kratom is, as I talked about. It's a Southeast Asian, what they call folk medicine, used widely, not just in the US, but really all over the world. It's derived from the dried leaves of a tree in the coffee family. It's native to Southeast Asia, where it's been used for centuries, y'all. If you research kratom online, you'll see it's been used literally for centuries. They say thousands of years. Well, this picture in this particular area here, it looks like a bar, doesn't it? It's a club of sorts. But guess what? They don't serve any booze here. This is where they serve the kratom tea. It's called a Kava Sutra. And here's a little more information about this place right here in this picture, this bar looking place that people go to. And this is in a place called Lantana, Florida. It's down in Florida. And it is a dimly lit bar, like a typical bar, with a rotating cast of characters, as it says: the magician, the repo man, the metalhead picking Slipknot on his unplugged strat. On a recent Friday night, there's about a dozen other patrons drinking, flirting, and swiping at their phones. But as it says, what's not there, as I mentioned, is booze. The bar serves only non alcoholic botanical drinks. And tonight, as it says, like most nights, the one drink that's clearly winning out is jumbo plastic cups filled with icy kratom tea. So, I didn't mean to read that whole thing to y'all and go into this long description, but I want y'all to understand that there's people on both sides of the spectrum when it comes to the kratom thing. They have kratom bars. People go and drink the tea and swear by it. Yet you've got these people who've lost loved ones to people who've used kratom and died, and juries awarding millions of dollars. There was another one, I didn't put it up there, but they just had, that was the first one. There's been other cases. A lady died from it. Her family was just awarded $11 million. So anyway, y'all, here's what it looks like. I mean, not to compare apples to oranges, almost look like a pot plant in a way, but that's the kratom plant right there. And as it says in the article there, the American Kratom Association says it's advocates for the rights of Americans. It says it advocates, I should say, to consume kratom. And here's the key: safely and legally. And, the group itself, the Kratom Association, tells us it's a billion-dollar industry. Who knew? I didn't even know what fucking Kratom was till about 6 years ago. And it's a billion-dollar industry, y'all, just in the US, by the way. That doesn't include other places around the country. Vendors importing more than 2,000 tons of it into our country every month. And even the actual Kratom Association itself is asking for federal oversight. They want government regulation. As long as it's regulated, it perhaps wouldn't become outlawed. I think that's probably a legit fear of the Kratom Association and the dealers and everything else, that it could become against the law, which I will give my opinion. I don't think it should become illegal. I would like to see more regulation because of the things we've heard. Um, and Lori, I like that you chimed in the chat. Thank you. Lori, one of our viewers and listeners, chimed in the chat. I heard that kratom is not good for anyone with respiratory problems. It weakens their respiratory and that whole thing. And I agree with that, Lori, by the way, because it certainly, I think, affected my respiratory when I was using it. I could feel it, whatever that means. You know, and so yeah, Dean, I see you switched pages on us here, and
I
yeah,
sure
kratom.
did.
Yeah, this has changed actually. It's illegal now in 4 states,
Okay.
instead of 6. The other 2, I forget which ones, have now legalized it. But yeah, it's definitely. You kind of threw me off now. I'm using them pictures as a guide to where I'm going with this conversation. But yeah, okay, so yeah, they want regulation, and I agree. And it's part of what Lori wrote in her comment there. And I know, I appreciate you bringing that up, by the way, Dean. The regulation that people are looking for is even potentially being prescribed. The problem with kratom is you can go into a gas station and they're fucking selling dusty old packs of kratom that have been sitting there for God only knows how long, that who knows where it might have came from. Um,
Right. Right next to the energy boosting supplements to
yeah,
keep you
well, you
alert
know
on the
what?
road.
We're going to talk about that in a second, Dean, because where I'll go with this is my recommendation is if you are watching, listening, you're thinking about trying to get off opiates, you're considering kratom as an option, don't buy any of that dusty ass gas station shit. Go to a legit vitamin store, a legit, health store. Ask them about kratom. Google it. Go on your phone and go into maps and put kratom. It'll come up with some places. Go to a legit place, and you know what a legit place is and ain't when it comes to this kind of shit. And when I was using it, I had a legit health, and vitamin store near where I lived, and I went in and I just was honest with them. I said, "Hey, man, I've been trying to kick opiates. This withdrawal shit is hell, and I want to try kratom, but I want to use legit kratom." And they talked to me and said, "Oh God, yeah, man, we're glad to talk to you about it." And understand there's different strains of kratom that are recommended for different things. You have what they call green bally, you have red bally. You get the idea, y'all. Mangda and all these different strains, because there are different potencies and different ones are recommended for different things. Some give you energy, some help better with opiate withdrawals, what have you. Now, I will tell you, this powder you see on the screen right now, that shit is nasty as hell. It's so fucking nasty. It's one of the worst things I have ever tasted in my life. And if you try to swallow this powder, have you ever tried, Dean, to swallow like a teaspoon of cinnamon? When you were a kid, did you ever have kids try to bet you, I bet you can't swallow a teaspoon of cinnamon?
I think that was a social media challenge, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
I
it's
think
like
the
almost
yeah.
impossible. Well, it's the same with kratom. The second you put it in your mouth, it instantly dries up any saliva in your mouth. It's almost impossible to swallow it. So, what some people do, and there's tons of information out there, even videos online you can see, is what they'll call the toss and wash. Because when you buy kratom bulk in this powder like this, it's about the cheapest way to buy it. So toss and wash is, you'll start off with whatever dosage you're going to do, which is a whole nother topic we're going to talk about in a minute. You got to be careful with your dosage. uh is, say you start off with, a tablespoon of it, and you just take the tablespoon, you toss it to the back of your throat, grab a fucking bottle of water and just start chugging that shit down, because it's nasty, man. I'm just telling you. I don't even know how people drink the tea, because to me it's fucking nasty. I tried toss and wash, couldn't fucking do it. Couldn't do it, y'all. So my option was caps, and you can buy bags of capsules, and this is pretty much what they look like. Yet you can also get them in bottles. They come in like pill bottles, like if you bought a bottle of vitamins or whatever. And it's kratom in these little plastic capsules. And they usually come in either half gram or gram sizes. The grams are a little harder to find than the half grams, but you know when you were taking as much opiate medication as I was, I think, and don't quote me on this, y'all, and please don't use this as a guide. Do your research. When I started taking them, I was taking like 8 grams at a time, a few times a day. That's a lot of fucking kratom. And so I was always happy when I could find the 1 gram size caps, because it was less caps that I had to swallow and all that fucking plastic. But I didn't give a fuck, because when you're in the withdrawals, man, you'll do just about anything. And then also, I didn't want to taste that nasty ass kratom. So, if it's an option you're thinking about, those are some of the ways people take kratom. You can drink the tea, you can do the toss and wash, you can take the caps, or on the right here, Dean, you mentioned, in the gas stations, you'll see the old dusty old ass old packets of kratom next to the 5 hour energy. Well, I never used this, but now they have concentrated liquid kratom. And I pulled this picture from the internet, and that's the back of a bottle because I don't want to endorse any one brand over another. There's a shit ton of brands out there. You know what I mean? Um, but I have been told that uh, people who start drinking the concentrated kratom can get hooked a lot easier. I don't know, y'all. I don't know. Never used it. I'm glad I never used it. Maybe it is an option. Lori in the chat room says, "Yuck, dew powder. I tried the liquid. Ugh." Oh, so apparently the liquid must taste pretty freaking nasty too. Like I said, y'all, I never tried it. If somebody has tried this stuff and would like to call in, there's the number on the screen. I see we do have some live viewers while we're live. If you come across the recorded version, of course, you don't want to call. But there's the number on the screen if you'd like to call in and chime in on the conversation. Lori, appreciate you being active in the chat room. You're welcome to call in live too if you like, but appreciate you sharing. Apparently, the liquid tastes nasty, but I don't know. I've heard people mix like the powder. Maybe they do it with the liquid too into smoothies or whatever. But anyway, so that's kind of that, as far as the description of kratom. Now, like I said, and I wanted to show this slide, where to buy kratom, find the best quality products. I highly encourage you, if you are going to try the kratom route to get off of opiates, don't do yourself a favor. Do not buy this shit out of a gas station, or if the packet's dusty or some, you know, place that's not like a legit, medicine vitamin place, if that makes sense. Go to a legit place that sells health and wellness products, and if they carry kratom, they'll be very educated about it, and their product will be moving as well. That's another thing. You don't want to buy this shit that's been sitting on the shelf forever. You go to these legit places, it's moving, and you're going to get, fresh product if it's something you may choose to decide to try. Thought I'd show this picture because this is kind of just giving you a heads up. If it's something you've never tried before, but you're really seriously thinking about jumping off the opiates, you go to a legit place. You very well may see a display like this. Like I said, sometimes you can buy the stuff in packets. Sometimes it comes in, little pill bottles, like if you bought a bottle of vitamins, whatever. But it's out there. It's definitely on display, y'all, in certain locations. So we're coming close to the end of this conversation about kratom now, y'all. We've talked about the subs, the methadone, the kratom. I thought we'd share this because I do, as y'all know, a lot of research online, and this is from Helio News, and it says this is from a doctor who wrote this, and it kind of summarizes it pretty well. I thought, we've seen many patients that the U.S. healthcare system is cut off from accessing prescription opioids, and we've talked about that, who are unable or unwilling to overcome their opioid addiction with treatment in the medical environment. I was one of them people. I had been through the treatment center route before. I didn't want to fucking do it again. And I didn't. I kicked, as I often say, in my sister's basement, for God's sake. I did not want to go down that route of getting on methadone or subs. It was next, but I didn't want to do exactly what he's talking about here, get involved in the treatment and medical environment again. And that's how I ended up using Kratom. So he says in this article, just eliminating kratom will not make these people all seek out proven treatments, but rather it'll drive a lot of people back to using heroin, fentanyl, or other illegal opioid sources and consume mega doses. You get the idea. So, what he's saying here basically is leave it up to each person to decide, regulate it. So, you're not getting crap in a gas station, you know. And then he talks about a little bit here. First, according to the FDA, kratom is not a drug or dietary supplement, but is legal for sale in most states. Um, with little regulatory oversight. So patients can take kratom and increase their dosage over time without advice, knowledge monitoring. That should be concerning since kratom is considered what they call a novel opioid. It's not technically an opiate or opioid. It attaches itself, though, and this is Glenn's non-scientific explanation of how it works. It attaches itself to the opioid receptors in the brain and tricks them into thinking that you've taken an opioid. And that's why it takes the edge off of the withdrawal symptoms. But technically, it's not an opiate. So, what it says here at the bottom, and I thought this was quite interesting. Second, interest in kratom among the U.S. population is huge, according to these colleagues and research that has been done. Kratom related videos on YouTube, like what I came across and watched and researched from 2019, was just a few years ago, have over 19 million views, y'all, and thousands of comments. So the point is, the reason I wanted to show this is the guy makes a great point that people are looking into it. 19 million views of these videos in just the past few years, all about kratom. People want to know about it. So if you're a person who's come across our podcast, you're thinking about getting off opiates, you want to get off opiates, you're considering your options, medication assisted treatment, kratom, whatever the fuck, go watch some of these videos, get yourself educated, and make what is the best choice for you. And, with all that said, y'all, I encourage you to get yourself educated. I just thought we'd show this, and I'm not endorsing this book over any other. It's just something that I saw and was out there on Amazon. Kratom, the truth about, and that's the technical name for the plant. I'm probably going to hatchet this all up. Mitragina speciosa, but again, it's the kratom plant. And you can see there's, like I said, all these different colors, the different strains, the red bali, the green bali, the whatever the fuck. And it's an introductory guide to capsules, powder, extract, the full effects. If you really truly want to get off opiates, opioid pain medication, whatever the fuck, you want to jump off, you want to get your life back, live drug free, and you're considering your options, I'm not telling you to use kratom. I'm not telling you not to. What I'm asking is give yourself a break and get educated on it. There's a shit ton of books out there on it. I read a couple of them when I was going through it, and it helped me decide. Like I said, even when it comes to dosing, I don't want to get into all that because I'm not going to recommend any particular dosage for anyone. I shared what I was doing, but that was all based on the knowledge I learned and getting myself educated. So I want to say in closing on this kratom topic, I have all the sympathy in the world for any parent that's lost a child because they took kratom and it killed them. Anyone who's lost a parent, a loved one, a colleague, a coworker, an employee, whatever. Of course, I'm compassionate about something like that. I'll also say when we compare the number of people that are dying from opiate overdoses, fentanyl overdoses, heroin overdoses. They're lacing this shit with fentanyl and lysine and everything else. Y'all know where I'm going with this. There's no comparison to the number of people that are dying from kratom. So I believe kratom should remain legal. It should be regulated. There should be some oversight, is my opinion. I believe it should always be an option, though, for the layperson, the consumer, to try if they would like to get themselves off opiates. Like I said, y'all, horrible, sad stories about people dying. Then you got people on the other end of the spectrum that literally say it saved their life. I'm one of them people that will say it helped save mine. It certainly helped get me through the withdrawals and helped to save my life, y'all. Let's switch gears now. talk a little bit about medical marijuana to ease opiate withdrawals. You can call it medical marijuana if you want. I'm just going to say smoking fucking pot, whether you got a medical license to do it or not. I smoked weed during my opiate withdrawals. It truly was like a godsend. I ain't gonna lie, and I was a pothead when I was a younger man. God, I smoked that shit for years. I was a fucking connoisseur, man. There ain't much you can tell me about pot that I don't already know. Of course, now though, with the legalization of it in so many places, they got these pot shops, man. They got all these different strains now, and everything else. There's probably some things I could learn if I wanted to, but I just choose not to smoke that shit anymore. Just like I said, even with the kratom, I fucking didn't want to switch from opiates and then be on kratom the rest of my life, or subs or methadone. If that's you, do you? I don't judge you, man. Whatever keeps you alive mainly and a productive member of society and have peace in your life. Same thing for me with the pot. Yeah, I used it to help get through the withdrawals, but I didn't want to become a pothead again. I used it with an intention, and then I weaned down off of it as the withdrawals were starting to lift from me, and then I jumped off and gave it up, and I'm fucking living 100% drug free and clean for over 2.5 years. But it helped with the withdrawals, y'all. It really was almost like a godsend. Uh, and it was not something I planned on, by the way. It was someone else who is very close to me recommended it and brought me some. And I was told that when they went to the pot shop, this was up in Michigan, they said, "Hey, someone close to me is going through opiate withdrawals," and wasn't even able to finish the sentence. And the girl behind the counter said, "Hey, I know just what to give you." And I was given a couple different strains and told, okay, this one would be good for in the morning when you're waking up. It'll give you a little bit of energy, take the edge off the depression, because, oh boy, do you go through depression when you're going through opiate withdrawals, because we haven't even really talked about that. When you're taking opiates on a regular basis, man, it fucks with your dopamine levels and your endorphins, all that shit. And now all of a sudden you take it away, your fucking dopamine is all fucked up. And so you do get depressed, on top of all those other things I mentioned earlier in the show. So smoking a little weed, not too much, because that shit is so powerful now, man. It ain't like the weed we used to smoke back in the 70s and 80s. You can sit around, smoke a little joint with people and still maintain, man. This shit now, it's so fucking potent. It's like one toke, man. I took one toke too many one night and I got fucking paranoid, like, oh my God, I ain't doing that again. And so I would limit just to one toke. And it did. It took the edge off the depression. And here's what else it did, y'all. It helped with my appetite. Because, like I said, one of those withdrawal symptoms is you can't fucking eat. You're starving, but you have no fucking appetite. And it gives you the munchies, the old cliche. Oh, people laugh about it. You get the munchie, but it does. It makes you hungry, so you're able to eat. And then, like I said, I was given a couple different strains and it was recommended, well, okay, this one's better to smoke at night because it will help with the insomnia, relax you, and help you to sleep. Now, like I said, there ain't nothing I could have taken them first few days that really would have fucking helped with anything. It was just that horrible. As the time went on, y'all, the withdrawal symptoms, the severity of them, the intensity of them started to lift. And that's where the kratom and the pot really, really came into play and helped me. And I used them on and off, and it began to wean down probably over the course of a month. And I have, it's weird. I have in my phone all the dates that I jumped off of every single thing. I have like, I gave up booze months before I ever got off the opiates. And, I don't even, I was vaping for a while and using nicotine pouches. So the point I'm making, I have all these, what I call clean dates in my phone to remind myself how long it's been since I've been off the booze, since I've been off the opiates, since I've been off the kratom, since I've been off the pot, since I've been off the nicotine. You get the idea. Um, I, for my Clean date, go by the last time I ever put an opiate in this body, and that's the fucking clean date I go by. You got some of these fucking purists and gurus around some of these programs will say, well, you weren't really clean if you were using kratom or smoking weed while you were going through the withdrawals. Hey, fuck you, man. Do you? I go by the clean date I fucking go by, because them fucking opiates were about to kill me, and the kratom and the pot were like godsends, like I said, to help me get through that. I choose not to use that shit today because I want to live a 100% clean and drug free life. Um, it was all about my intent, y'all. And like I said, I did not want to switch drugs and just jump from one to another. But I'm not telling you to smoke weed if you're going through opiate withdrawals. I'm not telling you not to. I keep saying that, I know, but I want to be crystal clear. That's just where I'm at with it. I'm sharing my experience, what I did, and what I felt like helped me. And this certainly was one of them. So we'll leave it at that with that. Uh, and I just thought we'd show this before we move on. That it was a piggyback to what I just showed you: marijuana for opiate withdrawal studies. And I like the last two paragraphs here. That's why I wanted to show this. Common opiate withdrawal symptoms include all the things I talked about: anxiety, insomnia, nausea, irritability, depression, aching body, hot and cold flashes, vomiting. And then it talks about using marijuana for opiate withdrawal can, not necessarily does, can, and certainly did for me, result in the following benefits: reduction of anxiety, mood enhancer, helps sleep, increases appetite, relieves nausea, relaxation of the nervous system. It can help with pain. You get the idea, y'all. So, do your own research, make up your own mind, but it certainly helped me. So that's that. And to summarize everything we just talked about, y'all, why did I want to go into such a deep dive today as we have, all about being dope sick, all about kicking opiates, all about buprenorphine, all about Suboxone, all about methadone, all about kratom, as controversial as it is, all about using pot, marijuana to relieve opiate withdrawal symptoms. Why would I go into such a deep dive about that and be so open and honest, even and passionate as I was about my experiences? Well, this is part of the reason why, y'all. How much fentanyl can be lethal? And we've shown this picture on this program before. It's out there. You probably have seen it before. Look at that. Look at just this small little 2 milligram amount. They put it next to a penny to show how little it takes to kill someone. And this stuff is, God, man, I get emotional talking about it because, like I've said on this show before, y'all, I've sat right next to people in 12-step recovery meetings I go to help me stay clean. And I come back the next day and I found out they relapsed and fucking died because they got some bullshit pills on the street that were laced with this bullshit fentanyl and fucking died. So, yeah, I think we were warranted in taking a whole show to take a deep dive into talking about this. Again, it's not the first time we have, but this is definitely the most in depth we've talked about medication assisted options for drug withdrawals and treatment. And this is why, y'all, this fentanyl's out there killing people. And I thought this was interesting. Now, this is numbers that go back a couple of years now, but it's from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. I did the math on this, and back in 2021, they estimated about 645,000 people died from an overdose involving opiates, whether it was a prescription or illicit street drug opiate. In those 22 years from 99 to 21, 645,000 people. Think about that, y'all. I did the math. It's 80 fucking people a day. died from an opiate overdose. And it's even crazier now with the fentanyl crisis. So, yeah, that's why I said, man, please, I know I cussed and sweared and I got passionate about, getting upset with people who will say people who on medication assisted treatment aren't really in recovery. Fuck all that, man. Whatever you got to do to, stay alive, do you. That's what I say. And these are the reasons I wanted to talk about it, y'all. So, we're going to move on now and bring the show full circle. Man, we've gone on quite a bit. We've been going a couple hours. And Dean, you still with me there? I appreciate you hanging tough with me, man. We're going to go into the opioid crisis news now and talk about just a couple stories in the news. And then we've got some music news and a couple funny memes. We always like to wrap the show up with some humor, and then we'll call it a night. So, Dean, before we do move on to the news, I'm just curious, because I mean, we've talked openly on this show that, you know, I'm an addict. I'm a person that suffered with substance abuse disorder on and off my whole life. Uh, we've also talked on this show that you're not. You're my partner in crime here on this show, the co-host, the producer in the background. You know, um, I know you sit back and just let me run my mouth and listen sometimes, but I'd just like to know what your thoughts and feelings are on all the things we talked about tonight, having to do with things like, these medication assisted treatment options like Suboxone and Methadone and Kratom and smoking weed and all that. Where are you at on that whole thing from a perspective of someone who's not an addict or not involved in the recovery community?
Well, going through the, I don't really have a whole lot of input on the, uh, the drug assisted recovery aids. Um, I mean, it's hard to trust doctors who were told to hand out these opioids 20 years ago and say, oh, they're completely safe. And now we're giving them but that's on one side of the fence. The other side of the fence is, well, much like others or many have self-medicated,
Hmm.
for that high, or for
Yep.
that, or for that pain relief. Self-medication is like playing Russian roulette. You don't know which pill is going to give you the hot dose, and you're
Yeah.
done. And for the most part, you don't care.
Well, you know what, Dean? You brought up a point that I have heard people, I'll say in the recovery community and in other group discussions, you kind of touched on it about, trusting doctors who
Yeah.
kind of sold everybody up the river and even the big pharma. And what a lot of people take issue with when it comes to some of these medication assisted options are there, it's the same fucking pharmacy companies and doctors
Yeah.
prescribing that shit that were prescribing the opiates. So they're still profiting from it and benefiting from it because now instead of pushing the oxys or the perks or the whatever, now they're pushing fucking subs and methadone. So it's like if you can't get them hooked on one, get them hooked on the other, is what some people have said.
So the other part of it was the kratom. Uh, the what's out there, and for every people that are saying, I mean, you've got, I'm looking at a website here that says by the Mayo Clinic,
Yeah,
you know
I saw that
and they're
article. They're
saying
saying don't
how
do it.
how
Yeah, they
how
say don't.
how pretty much it's poison. they're
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
they're saying it, they're saying it, just I didn't want to summarize it,
No,
but
I get it. I saw that. I saw
but
the Mayo
yeah,
Clinic is saying don't do it. Let me ask you this, Dean.
don't do
Have
it.
you noticed, because I certainly have, in the past couple of few years, especially in the last couple years, like I said, I never even fucking heard of Kratom till about 5, 6 years ago. And now it seems like I'm driving down the street and I'll see all these fucking signs for Kratom, Kratom. A lot of vape
Sure.
shops sell it, and vapes and Kratom, vapes and
Uh,
Kratom. Do
You
you
know,
see it too?
weed dispensaries are on every street corner
CBD.
next to the
Yeah.
kratom guys in the vaping stores.
Yeah, it's
So
like
and
no
now
one
they're
even fucking heard
finding
of
that.
kratom. But you know what though? I'll tell you why it's so prominent now, and you see all these signs for kratom. It's a direct result of the opiate crisis because people realize that sell the stuff that people are so strung out on the opiates. They're trying like fucking hell to get off of it, and they're using the kratom as potential option, and that's who's buying all the shit up. It's not as common as I think people might think that someone just takes kratom for the effects of kratom. There are those that do, like that one story we talked about. People go to the
Right,
juice bar
right.
and drink kratom, and they say it helps with their alertness, gives them energy and all that, and they're fucking hooked on kratom. But most people that are using it now are using it to help them get off opiates.
I don't know if you can read this,
Yeah, yeah.
but
What you got here?
did you while under kratom, did you experience any of this stuff?
Weight loss, I don't believe affected me. Perhaps a little dry mouth. The chills, definitely, but I would couple that with actually going through opiate withdrawals. I did
Sure.
not get any nausea or vomiting. I didn't notice any change in urine or constipation. Although if someone started taking it who wasn't taking opiates, I can definitely see how it would cause constipation. Now, the Mayo Clinic in the article you just mentioned, they do talk about how if you're taking kratom,
Oh,
lots of it and regular, it
this
can fuck
this
your
is the
liver up.
website. This is the Mayo Clinic right here.
Oh, this is the Mayo Clinic.
Yeah, if you
Okay,
look at the
yeah.
top, it says mayoclinic.org.
Yep.
Yeah, so they're saying all this stuff. It's
See
fast,
now
effective.
a lot of
Takes
that I think really depends on dosage too,
yeah.
Dean, like the
Oh
dizziness,
yeah.
drowsiness, and all that. So, I will say this. I will say this. I mentioned earlier I didn't want to make any comments on dosage. I will say this, and this is what I read on legit sites, and I would recommend this to anyone. If you're going to try Kratom, start at the lowest dose possible, and that's kind of common sense. But some people, especially addicts, think, well, if they say two, I'll do four. That'll work better. No, start at the
Yeah.
lowest fucking dose possible. And if you're not
And that goes
feeling it,
back to
slowly work your
the
way up.
self medication thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll
Yeah.
start with a low dose. Yeah,
Yeah.
when you talk about dosage, usually a physician kind of controls that. But when you're talking about trying to replace one drug with a drug to get me off the other drug, or
Yeah.
this other thing, or kratom to get me off of this, people are self-medicating. and
Yes.
and unfortunately, you don't know why this woman's son died. If he overdosed on kratom, could he have overdosed? And of course,
Did he get a bad batch that had been sitting in a gas
did he
station?
buy
Did he
gas
take too
station?
much? Did he have a
I
pre-existing respiratory
like
condition
you,
like Lori
I feel
said?
sympathy, but
Yeah.
he was doing this likely because he was coming off of something else. And or just like so many of our teenagers right now, they're starting up vaping because they're just bored
Yeah.
and they think it's cool. And what
Yep.
next is kratom? They're going to drive by the kratom store and says, "Hey, I want to do something cool. Let's go to
I'm
a
sure
kratom
it's
bar."
probably
And
already
before you know it,
happening.
you're into a whole thing. And you know what? Here's my experience in the last couple of months. Yeah, I've been doing keto
Right,
as a
right.
kind of a try and
Low
keep the weight
carb
down,
stuff.
stuff
Yeah.
like that. What that does is it slows your system down,
Hmm.
so you don't go.
Yeah.
So I was kind of in a one of the Vietnamese markets. Go there once in a while, and I noticed an herbal tea.
Yeah.
I can't tell you the name of it. It's in my kitchen drawer,
I get it.
and I looked it up, and I googled it, and it's from India. It's a tea leaf,
Hmm.
these little tea bags, and it's supposed to speed up the system. And I
Mm-hmm.
got to tell you, it worked
Right,
great.
right.
Okay, it worked great. But here's what happened. The first time I used it I had a cup of tea at night. The next morning, I woke up, I had nightmares,
Oh, wow.
and I had a slight headache in the morning.
Is there a lot of caffeine in it, probably? Do you know? Or?
I I know I don't believe there's caffeine in it at all. That would have been in the
Hmm.
ingredients, and it's just this one plant in India that
Wow.
they use to make this tea. So I go, okay, well, I dismissed it as I used it once, boom, boom, boom. So it
Yeah.
was maybe a few weeks later, I used it again. Same thing. I woke up with nightmares.
Wow.
And then I woke up with the slightest little annoying headache. And I'm
Hmm.
going, it did the job. I got up in the
Yeah, yeah.
morning and first thing I had to do was go to the bathroom. And
Right.
but I'm like, so I'm looking at the thing and of course they say, controlled doses. I'm like, well, I'm not drinking 10 cups of tea. I'm drinking 1 cup of tea the night before. Boy, it worked, but the what it did to my brain activity, I mean, I'm waking up with nightmares.
1 cup of tea. So,
1 cup
yeah.
of tea gave me nightmares. and
Yeah.
and so you kind of have to kind of wonder. I mean, first of all, at some point in centuries, somebody said, hey, that 5 leaf plant, maybe we should grind it up and smoke it and see what's
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
happen. Poppies, the poppy plant,
Yeah.
I mean, all these things were plants. And,
Mhm.
so kratom, sure, it's probably, it just hadn't been, I don't know, hadn't been, I guess, an expressed thought over the years.
Yeah.
It's been this
Well,
secret in
you know,
Southeast Asia, and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
one of those things.
Well, that's why I think, there's again, my I think my thoughts on it are there's obviously benefits to it, or you wouldn't have all these people swearing it saved their life.
Yeah.
There's also some maybe
Mm.
downside to it, kind of like even what you just talked about with the tea. And that's why I was saying even the Kratom Association is in favor of regulation. They want to see more oversight and regulation of it so things don't happen like what you talked about, where, some teenage kid can walk into a gas station and buy a fucking old dusty pack of Kratom and die, for God's sake. But well, Dean, I appreciate your perspective because, like I said, it's interesting to hear the perspective, from other people that haven't struggled with substance abuse.
Well,
So,
I guess before anyone starts, going in their backyard and cutting a piece of plant and trying to smoke
yeah,
it,
yeah.
I would probably say,
Well, and by the way, I don't mean to interrupt you,
don't.
but I've never heard of anybody smoking kratom. I'm sure somebody's probably tried it, but that's
I
not,
don't
I know
know.
what you mean,
I
though.
don't know. But you know
All
what?
right.
It's like I said, if it's been around for thousands of years, it's likely, been had its uses,
Gone through a
much
lot
like
of
this
trial
this
and
tea
error.
that from India that I had.
Yeah.
It goes back to generations and generations, and I'm
Hmm.
sure a doctor, a medicine man, I don't know what,
Yeah.
had probably, as one of these things. Oh, you're feeling backed up here. Drink a
Yeah.
cup of this, and
Well,
you'll be all fine in the morning. But then they said long-term exposure. You don't want to, you don't want to overdo
yeah.
anything. You can overdo, and
Well, like
and
they
it
said
can be a
at the Mayo
problem.
Clinic, long-term exposure can start to fuck with your liver and things. So,
Yeah. Well, it can't.
yeah,
Everything kind
yeah,
of anything you put in your body can affect your
yeah.
liver, and
Well, and that's it. So, like we said, folks, educate yourself, make what you think is the best decision for you. Do you? But we just want to talk about it
uh,
because these opiates are just killing so many people. And there are people out there that swear by now, not just the kratom, but the Suboxone, the methadone, the marijuana, whatever. If that's an option for you, if you just want to go cold turkey and fucking go through it, man, that's an option too.
well, I've never
So
heard. I don't know if there's ever been a reported case of someone ODing on pot.
yeah, I've never heard of that either.
Yeah, there's no big, pot industry. No,
Yeah.
if anything, it sparks hunger. Sure,
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe they get the munchies so bad
you
they
know,
eat
I'm
themselves
sure
into a
the
food
I'm
coma,
sure
but,
the makers of Nabisco
yeah,
and all the other munchie companies are just,
yeah.
they would love to have pot be the more accepted brand of, I don't know,
Well, hey,
it,
I'm glad we can have a sense of humor about it too, because let's face it, it's a serious topic, y'all, but we got to laugh at ourselves every now and then too. Well, speaking of it being a serious topic, let's go
hmm
back to the news and talk about the opioid crisis in the news. Just a couple stories this week, y'all. So, I kind of feel like I've been picking on my home state of California, my home state now. I'm originally from Michigan and Florida, my second home for 30 years. And now I'm actually almost coming up on my California bursary, as they say. It's almost 1 year that I've been here in Sacramento, where I'm coming to you live from right now. And I do kind of feel like I've been picking on San Francisco, and I'm not. I'm not picking on San Francisco. It's just that I live an hour and a half from San Fran, and they've really been taking it on the chin there about how bad the fentanyl crisis is out of control in certain parts of the city, and specifically the Tenderloin. And if you remember, Dean, I had a very interesting experience over there that we did
to
a
get your
deep dive.
window fixed.
Yeah, I did. And anybody who didn't pick up that episode, you can go back and watch.
Good
I
grief.
forget what episode number it was, but it was called "Back from the Dead," Dare Me podcast. And holy camole, I took a trip down into the Tenderloin district of San Francisco, and boy, oh boy, I'm lucky I got out alive. But that's another story. Point I'm making is, y'all, yeah, it's so sad because cities like San Francisco, I just love so much. It has such a rich history. It's so beautiful there. And it is sad to see what's going on in certain parts of the city. It's not like that everywhere. There's certain parts of the city you feel completely safe. It's hustling and bustling. You just, got to be real careful, what block you go down anymore. Well, I wanted to show this story today because this is, just from the past week, that it ain't just California, it ain't just San Francisco. In the Big Apple, New York City, we talked about last week how in San Fran, the overdose death rate for the month of August was the highest ever on record, ever. It matched January, both the highest ever on record. Well, guess what? In New York, overdose crisis reaches historic levels in New York City. So let's not fool ourselves into thinking this is just a problem unique to California. In not New York either. It's going on all over the country, y'all. But again, in New York, it says drug overdose death rates by the numbers, fentanyl death have increased 279% in just a 5 year period. And the most recent, reporting numbers available up to 2021. It's just insane. And then here was this other story that the opioid crisis in New York City not only reaching historic levels, but is killing a New Yorker every 3 hours. Every 3 hours, somebody in New York City dies from an opiate overdose. Isn't that insane, man? And then it says fentanyl accounted for most of the fatal drug overdoses in the city as well. And then I pulled this story from CBS. New York is a hub now for drug cartels and fentanyl distribution, the DEA New York division, that special agent in charge says. So, here we're all, it seems like so focused on how bad it is in California right now, and it is bad in certain areas. it's just as bad in New York. And it just seems like, God, man, you know, you would think the cartels and distribution centers, they'd go to some, remote off the grid location like Pocatello, Idaho or whatever. But here they are right in the middle of the Big Apple. I guess, maybe it's harder to be, seen amongst all the madness there in New York. But talk about another city with such a rich, rich history. If you've never been to New York, I tell people all the time, every person, every American certainly should go to visit New York City at least once. You can't explain it to someone. You can try, but you'll never really understand New York City unless you go there. It's that unbelievably phenomenal. And it's just so sad when you hear stories of, every 3 hours a New York City resident is dying from an OD. The cartels are set up there, distribution centers for fentanyl. Again, y'all, I've said it before on this show. I'm not going to let this go, man. I monitor these stories in the news every week. There's something new. And so we could go on for 3, 4 hours talking about it, but I just try to hit a couple of the headlines. And this is just more information on the headline we just saw there. That they talk a little bit more about. They found more than 40 pounds of fentanyl in just one drug bust in the Bronx. And by the way, that was just a block from the daycare center we've talked about on this show the last couple of weeks, where a 1-year-old baby died because they were dealing fentanyl out of the freaking daycare center. And then just a block away, right after that happened, they bust a guy with 40 pounds of that shit. Oh my God, y'all. I tell you what, man, I don't know what the answer is. I wish it was that simple that we could all just say, do this and we'll fix it. It ain't going to happen that way. And here's another example of that, because it ain't a problem unique to the United States. We've talked on this show the past couple of weeks about, how it's out of control in Greece, how it's out of control in the UK. Here's a story I pulled from ABC News about how Thai police say drug busts are out of control. They just netted methamphetamine, crystal meth, heroin worth 8.2 mil, which, you know, may not even seem like a lot on the big scale anymore, with all this drug, dealing and everything else going on. But the point I'm making, y'all, this is not a problem unique to the United States or the UK or wherever. It's going on all over the world, even in places like Thailand. And, here's a little more information out of this article from Bangkok. Um, you get the idea, y'all. So, yeah, that's the opioid crisis in the news. And we're going to shift gears, y'all. And I want to do a few shout outs. And I thought we'd do this one since we were just talking about things, out of the country and all. I'm kind of proud of this. I talked last week about how our YouTube channel, the Dare Me Podcast YouTube channel subscriptions have grown tremendously. Still pretty small by most people's standards, but by my humble standards, we've quadrupled the amount of subscribers. And the latest one we got is someone who now watches our show and subscribed to our channel from South Africa. I gotta tell y'all, man, every now and then I think to myself, oh God, this fucking podcast has turned into so much work. What have I got myself into? But then I get, messages like this, because we do have viewers that watch mostly the recorded version up in Alberta, Canada. We have them in the UK. We've heard from people in Romania, down in Mexico, and South America, and now South Africa. And this subscriber goes by the name Chef Ray. And highly encourage you to check out Culinary Adventures with Chef Ray. And I just want to send a shout out to Chef Ray. Thanks for the subscribe and the like. We hope you enjoy our content, and we hope everything is good and that you're holding it down in South Africa. Thanks for watching the Dare Me podcast. So I also wanted to send a shout out to an old, old love of mine and friend forever for life, my friend Jody. Oh my gosh. We've stayed friends all over the years, but we recently kind of reconnected on social media, and she's been promoting the show. I do reels all week, and she wanted to know how to share one of the reels I did on her social media to promote the show. And so, yeah, y'all, we got a lot of fans out there, and I just can't thank y'all enough. So, thank you for promoting the show, Jody, and jumping on board with us. And then I also wanted to send a shout out to this one, not so fun to send out, but to all my friends at the East Side Alano Club in Detroit. I'll get to that one in a second, y'all. We lost another person, y'all. I didn't know this man, but there was a young man named Logan who was really working hard at staying clean. And unfortunately, he lost his fight with addiction and he went out and used and he died. And there was a memorial service for him today from like 1 to 4 this afternoon for him. And man, that is what I call the best home group in the world. Certainly was my home group when I was back in Detroit. I have my home group out here in Cali now, and one in Orlando, and but that East Side Alno Club in Detroit. I know we have a lot of viewers and listeners from there to this show. I just want to let you know I've been thinking about you all day. And I also want to express my condolences to Logan's family and all the people that were close with him. Okay, well, shifting gears, y'all. I am gonna send another. Just goes to show, y'all. This is a serious topic, and certainly warrants the discussion and the deep dive information we talk about on this show. It's real, y'all. It's real. But on a brighter note, y'all, I want to send another shout out to this guy I met. My life is so crazy, man. I meet some of the coolest fucking people. And yesterday I met this guy. He goes by the name Bugby. His name's Connor, but his stage name is Bugby. And we just start bullshitting, and next thing you know, come to find out, we both do music, and here I'm my little humble ass telling him, oh yeah, I work in Logic and Pro Tools and I do covers and I record stuff. And he's like, bro, he, he he turned me on to his YouTube channel and his music. And look at this, man. This tune, Fast Money, and this video has over 400,000 views. The dude is legit. He's a real one, y'all. And I don't know if any of y'all remember that old Police tune, When the World is Running Down, you make the best of what's still around. They kind of used that beat for this song and he raps to it, and the video is fucking off the chain, y'all. And you can see he's got over 5,000 subscribers to his YouTube channel. I wish we had that many. We'll get there maybe one day. But if you're looking to check out some really cool music, go check out Bugby on YouTube and subscribe to his channel and check out his videos. I did a deep dive into it. This was my favorite tune, The Fast Money, but there's a whole bunch of them on the channel. So anyway, shout out to you, Connor. Bugby in the house. It was cool meeting you. All right. Moving along, y'all, we're going to bring the show to a close here real soon, but I wanted to just talk briefly about the Rolling Stones released another song off of their new album that's going to be released a little later this month. And the latest single they released is called Sweet Sounds of Heaven. It's freaking awesome, y'all. I was a little suspect, okay, with these collabs, I'm kind of a Stones purist, but it's fucking awesome. Lady Gaga and Stevie Wonder featured on it. If you haven't heard it yet, check it out. Then I wanted to do this one as well. You guys have heard me talk about one of my favorite artists and just favorite all around people over and over and over. This guy Kasky, he released a song this week and a video called Dixie, which is his mother's name. And these are still shots I captured from the video that he released this week. Oh my God, y'all. If you can watch that video without getting filled up, you're a stronger man than I. It's kind of his version of the like Tupac Dear Mama song, you know what I mean? But it was super intense for me because I've actually met Dixie. Here's a couple pictures of me and Kasky. I met him a few times in my life. We've kind of become little friendship buddies, you know what I mean? And this was at this Future of Artists Summit that I went to last December that him and this producer Anonymous put on. And God, there had been a few hundred people there at least. And they had just so much great information, speakers, seminar. You get the idea. It was really cool. And while I was there, oh, well, we're missing a picture. I was going to show that picture of me and Kasky's mom, Dixie, but it's not there. Uh, anyways, Kasky put out this song and video this past week called Dixie. I highly encourage you to go check it out. Again, here's a screenshot I took from his YouTube channel. Yeah, if you can find that, Dean, maybe we can put that up. It's you know, me and Kasky's mom. But moving along, this is that girl Claire Rosencrantz, and I wanted to talk about her. Look how beautiful she is, y'all. She's so pretty. Got to see her a couple of times. Actually, I've seen her 3 times now perform. Most recently over at August Hall in San Francisco. Oh, there's me and Dixie. Okay, we just had those 2 pictures mixed up. But that's Kasky's mom, Dixie, who I met at that Future of Artists Summit that I talked about. There's me and Kasky. There we are at the summit. And then his mom was there just helping out with the event and everything, helping check people in and everything. What a nice person. Oh my God. Everybody was so nice. Everybody was so nice to me there. I got to meet Anonymous mom and dad. And so, anyway, shout out to my friends Kasky and his mom Dixie. I love the song, bro. Love the video. It's so awesome. So, again, talking more about that girl, Claire Rosencrantz, that we showed that picture of. Here's a couple more pics of her. These are recent posts she put out there. She's wearing her I Love New York shirt. And she's not just a talented singer, y'all. She's a talented musician. And there she is playing the guitar as well. And the reason I'm bringing her up, y'all, is because she's dropping her new debut album on October the 6th, just 5 days away. Grab that from her Insta. And then on the right there, y'all, is a picture of her and her dad, Ragnar Rosencrantz. And Ragnar, if you remember, is her father. And they've been making music together since she was a little girl. Started singing at like 8 years old. And there's like videos out there on YouTube of her sitting on her dad's lap at the piano and them making music together. And they write all their music together. And so, anyway, I saw her at August Hall in San Francisco, I don't know, a few months back, and she was still kind of recuperating from the long illness she had. So she wasn't really able to go out and mingle with the crowd and everything. But her dad, Ragnar, did. And I got to meet him and I talked with him. And check it out, y'all. He gave us a shout out for the Dare Me podcast. We're going to play it right
I'm standing here with Glenn Victor, and we're going to all listen to the Dare Me podcast.
All right, it's Ragnar Rosencrantz, Claire's dead, y'all. Rock and roll. Thanks, bro. Really appreciate it. Oh, you rock. Of course, man.
How cool is that? He is such a great guy, and he did that like totally spur of the moment. It's like I kind of like put him on the spot, but he was totally cool doing it, you know. And so we played that on the show a couple of times. But Claire is like so talented, man, and she's like this huge international star now, travels all over the world, and yeah, I just so excited for her and her dad. And the new album drops October 6th. If you don't know who Claire Rosencrantz is, go check her out, y'all. I promise you'll dig her stuff. Then I want to talk about Romy. If you know who Romy is, you already know, but she is 1/3 of the group called the XX. And the XX have been around for years, but they also each individually do solo stuff from time to time. And she dropped this one back a few weeks ago on September the 8th. I brought it up today because I was a little late getting to listening to it after it was released. And this past week, man, I just been bumping the shit out of this album and I just love it. It's called Midair, and then she announced some tour dates, but they're selling out fast. And she is going to go to LA and San Fran. So that's December 1st and 2nd. I'm going to see if I might be able to check one of those out. But if you haven't checked out Romy's Midair, it's club music, y'all. If you haven't listened to any good club music in a while and you think maybe that's a thing of the past or whatever, you're badly mistaken. It is fresh, new club music and it sounds great. Check it out. All right. Next Sunday, y'all, I'm going to try to wrap up the show a little early because I'm hoping to get out of this studio and get to this show in time before it starts. And it's a cover band that many of y'all may have heard of before. They're a Led Zeppelin cover band called Get the Lead Out. And I know there's a couple of Zeppelin cover bands out there. I know Jason Bonham, John Bonham's son. John Bonham, of course, was the drummer for Zeppelin who passed away. And his son Jason plays drums now and goes out and does these shows. Well, this group Get the Let Out's been around a while, and I just love their music. Can you tell how eclectic my music taste is? I went from Stones to Claire Rosencrantz to Caskey to Romy to Led Zeppelin. I'm all over the place, y'all. Pardon me, but anyway. Just thought I'd play this quick clip in case Get the Let Out comes to your town, and you may want to see them too. They put this on social media, kind of promoting the show. Check it out. Well, Dean, if I was reading your body language correct, you were kind of thinking the same I was when he was hitting them notes on communication breakdown. It was a little bit cringy, just a little bit.
That high note was
Yeah.
not well played.
Yeah, but I'm gonna try to go anyways, because I mean, with Zeppelin, let's face it. I mean, Robert Plant, loved him to death,
Yeah.
but Jimmy Page, man, playing that guitar, I'm hoping the music will be good. So we'll see. Hopefully, I'll be able to make it to that show next week. So I just thought I'd mention that real quick, y'all. Now we're gonna do a few funny memes and wrap this show up. I thought this was a good transition from talking about music. I saw this one out there. It says you just had to be there, and if you know, you know. This, of course, was the logo for a music downloading service called LimeWire. But I go back even farther than that because this was post Napster. You remember Napster, of course, right, team?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was the first platform you could download free music from that was so controversial, man. And then LimeWire came, then FrostWire came, but this was before all the platforms like SoundCloud and Spotify and YouTube Premium and all that, and everybody would get. But the problem with, things like, what became with Napster, LimeWire, FrostWire, you'd get all these fucking viruses in these songs you'd download. And then, of course, that was before, like, smartphones and shit. And so you download these songs onto your computer and then you'd burn a CD and have to write the names of all the songs on the CDs, or make a mixtape or mix CD for your secret admirer or whatever the fuck. I got to tell you, man, I don't miss those days. I know we talked on this show about how vinyl is making a little bit of a comeback, but I just love the fact that I got every song in the world right here at my fingertips in this little phone. I love it, and the quality, the digital quality is great. But anyway, a little blast from the past there with LimeWire. Then I thought this was kind of funny. How's your energy level? Tying into the whole music thing. I want to rock and roll on occasion and party every once in a while. So if you're one of our young viewers and listeners, you may not get it, but there's an old Kiss song called I Want to Rock and Roll All Night and Party Every Day. But this old dude who's still a diehard Kiss fan, he changed his tune and decided he's going to slow down a little bit, just rock and roll on occasion and party every once in a while. And then I thought I'd show this one to kind of bring it on home, y'all. If I look tired today, it's because I am. I have been burning it at both ends lately, y'all. And I kind of procrastinated about putting this show together and put it off and put it off and put it off. And so I didn't get a whole lot of sleep last night putting this show together right up to the wire. And my sleeping schedule is so fucked up, man. It literally goes around the clock. I mean, I'm always, one of them guys, a self-described night person, but living this retirement life, even though I don't feel like I'm retired lately, working on this podcast so much and all the other things I do and involved in. My sleep schedule just kind of goes around the clock where I get up earlier and earlier or go to sleep later and later every day where, now I'm back tomorrow. I'm going to probably wake up at about 7 in the morning, instead of, going to sleep at like 4 in the morning, it's just weird. So I thought this was funny. Big Bird looking a little bit ratty there. The human body needs 8 hours of sleep, science says, to function properly. And me on 3 hours of sleep saying, we ride at dawn, bitches. So, anyway, that's it, y'all. That brings us to an end. And we go full circle on this edition of the Dare Me podcast, episode 29. We'll be bringing you episode 30 next week, and we hope you can tune in for that one as well. I see we still got some viewers there. If you hung with us for this whole show, God bless you, man. And for those of y'all that come across the recorded version, I know this was a long one. Maybe take it in bits and pieces like I do with a lot of podcasts I listen to. I'll listen to part of it on the way to my destination, wherever I may be going in the car, and catch the second half on the way back. Or sometimes when I'm get ready to, start dozing off at night, I'll listen to something to help put me to sleep. So, in any case, all that said, we hope you enjoyed the show. Like I often say at the end, y'all, if you're going through hell, keep fucking going. You can get through it. And Dean, before we wrap up, is there anything you want to add?
I want to say thanks, Lori, for all the chatting in. We
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah.
the contribution, and we'll see you all next week.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I see Lori just commented in the chat again while I was going on and on. She said, what's she saying? Remember the Cali convention wanted to play Hotel California. we uh we and some friends went to a convention in San Diego. That's right. Lori and Eric were there, and then we went to a recovery dance, and she asked them to play that song, Hotel California. Yeah, and that was she's still in the chat, and she says you're very welcome. And wasn't that the Eagles? Yes, that was the Eagles that did Hotel California. And I guess speaking of the Eagles, I think they're doing one more, what they're calling farewell tour, and then they're going to call it a day. So, and speaking of calling it a day, we're going to go ahead and call it a day too. So you're right, Dean. Thank you, Lori. Thank you to all our viewers, listeners. We hope you enjoyed the show. Dean, as always, thank you for participating and holding it down in Orlando. And again, everyone, we hope you enjoyed the show, and we hope to have you tune in again next time for the Dare Me podcast. Good night.
Good night.